I want to call this meeting to order. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge that the meeting that is taking place this evening in the various locations where we are situated is on land which is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Anishinaabe people. Madam Clerk, the invocation, please.
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you. And the roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Thank you. There are no announcements this evening except the one which has been an overriding presence among us since March, and that is the COVID-19 pandemic. You will all know that last Thursday, Regional Council approved an extension of the mandatory mask bylaw to run through to April the 1st. That is in the context of the rising number of cases in Ontario and in Niagara. Ironically, on Thursday, when that bylaw was discussed and passed, there were 12 new cases in Niagara alone. In Fort Erie, there have been 5 new cases in the past month. And fortunately, there haven't been any new deaths, but I would urge everyone to be cautious, be respectful, and do the things that have been begged of all of us over the past 6.5 months. Wash your hands frequently, maintain physical distance from others who aren't in your bubble, and wear a mask when it's not possible to physical distance, or when you think that it may not be possible to physical distance. It's the only way that we're going to overcome this and minimize the expansion of the infections until such time as there is a vaccination available for everyone. And, you know, it's all well and good for individuals to think that they're immune or that if they get sick, it won't be that serious. The problem is that if you're infected, you then become a vector for transmitting the infection to others. And those others may be individuals who have a compromised immune system or who are susceptible to more serious health implications. And the research so far shows that even people who have mild symptoms may have long-term health implications. So I would urge everyone to help us contain this virus and minimize the impacts on our community. There is no addendum this evening. Are there declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Dubanow and then Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have to declare a conflict with item 12F on the agenda under motions, request SPCA's policies and procedures with respect to animal services. Sorry, I cut off my with respect to animal services, as the company I work for has performed contracted services for the Fort Erie SPCA.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also have to declare a conflict for motions 12C, site plan agreement, as I am an investor of the property in question.
Thank you. Are there any others? And I, similar to Councillor Butler, have a pecuniary interest with respect to 12C, since I have a client that has a cannabis growing facility and is contemplating the expansion of that operation. If there are no other declarations of pecuniary interest, I would point out that there is on our agenda notice of an upcoming public meeting with respect to a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 625 Garrison Road. And that the report for that will be available on September 30th, 2020, and the public meeting itself will take place on October the 5th, 2020 at 6 p.m., part of our council and committee meeting that evening. That then takes us to the regional councillors report, and I see Councillor Insina, you're here. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Redekop and councillors. I hope everybody is well. I realize you have a long meeting ahead of you, or it's a long scheduled meeting, so I'm going to try and keep this short. The new school year has brought with us has brought with it the new community safety zone here in Fort Erie. The zone is designated by the two signs posted on Central Avenue between Birdie Street and Gilmore Road. The rules of the road don't change, just the penalties. They actually double. The zone is part of the Vision Zero road safety program that was initiated in 2019. This week, the Niagara Regional Police Services will be patrolling the area and will be enforcing the regulations. This area, by Our Lady of Victory Catholic School, met the criteria for the region. It was a regional road. There were speeding complaints, percentage of students and families walking to and from school, the speed study results, and the number of collisions. Mayor Redekop has brought forward the area of Garrison Road by the Greater Fort Erie High School and the area in front of Garrison Public School to be considered. I'm going to follow up with that with the Director of Transportation, and I'm going to bring that up at our next Public Works meeting just to see, in fact, what we can do and where it's going to go from there. As everybody is aware, garbage collection changes will come into effect next month. The region has developed an app for residents in order to keep track of when and what to put out to the curb. The app can be downloaded from the region website. So you can search the region website. It's under Niagara Region Waste. Those residents that require pickup of medical waste or diapers can contact the region or go online to find out about the extra pickups for those items. Elderly residents who require assistance getting their garbage to the curb can contact the region for services that can be provided for them. You can expect further communications regarding waste pickup in a forthcoming to all the residents, including mailouts. There's advertising of all the media, all the different forms of media. The Niagara Region official plan is being prepared and currently went through the councillor interview stage. I did attend one of the interviews, and during my interview, I made it clear that our heritage, that our natural heritage features and our environment need to be protected. At the regional council meeting last week, the topic of the Ramsar designation for the Niagara region came up before council. The designation brought about much discussion. I shared the view of the mayor and through the town of Fort Erie and support the Ramsar designation. The decision was referred back to staff to engage legal services to see how the designation would affect agricultural zones, if it did at all. The mayor touched on the extension of the bylaw. There were a lot of people that had been upset because of the late date as of April 1st, but as was stated, there was the caveat that this could be brought before regional council to be modified or terminated at any time in between now and April 1st. So we don't have to wait till April 1st to call an end to this. Hopefully we can do this sooner. COVID will be gone. Fingers are crossed. That's all I have, Mayor Redekop. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Councillor Encina. A lot of meat there. Any members of council have any questions of the regional councillor? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, to Councillor Encina. Councillor Encina, I did mention this to the mayor earlier last week about that in the subdivision here in Village Creek for garbage pickup, there was a lot of glass that spilled out of the truck and also a lot of leakage that spilled out of the truck again in a very highly residential area. I don't have to explain the dangers of all that from kids cutting themselves on the glass and the animals to the germs that are probably in the leakage itself. So again, I brought it up about a year ago. The situation did improve somewhat, but it's kind of coming around again. And I sent some pictures to, someone sent me some pictures that I gave to Mayor Redekop, and I would imagine that it was going to be discussed at the regional level, but I just wanted to mention it again. The other thing you mentioned about the garbage pickup for those people in need, for the elderly that need it. If they're already registered on the current program, do they have to re-register or will it just be automatically? Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Are there any other
Um,
members?
Sorry, go ahead.
Councillor Encina, you wanted to respond?
Through you, Mayor Redekop, to Councillor Noyes. I had brought that issue up with regards to the spewing of things coming out of the trucks before. I will contact the director again, especially with the glass. That's uncalled for. Shouldn't happen. I'll look after that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mayor
Councillor Encina. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I just want to express appreciation to you as well as Councillor Encina for looking at Garrison Road for a potential community safety zone as well. I know you touched on the issue, what you saw in front of GFES, a recent meeting. I see things similar in front of Garrison Road School all the time. And just with the volume of traffic and the higher speed limit, I think it is something that needs to be looked at. And Councillor Encina, I hope you keep council here apprised as the status of that, because I think it's something that does need to be looked into, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Any other councillors have any questions of the regional councillor? If not, thank you very much, Councillor Encina. You can
Thank
relax
you, Mayor
now.
Redekop, for the time.
That then takes us to presentations and delegations. And the first delegate is Ann Radicic, board member for the Alzheimer's Society. And I would point out that there is a resolution later in our agenda to proclaim September the 21st. Today is World Alzheimer Day. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Nice to see everyone. Shall I start? I apologize. I'm not used to
Hey,
this.
start. Yes, we're all eagerly listening.
So I apologize. It's a little bit like last year, but perhaps we forgot, as in, dementia, we forget these things. So hopefully it'll sound fresh. Mayor Redekop, members of the council, town staff, and members of the public that are watching. My name is Ann Radicic. I'm a board member of the Alzheimer's Society Niagara Foundation. And thank you for the opportunity to appear before you this evening and share information about the society again, and some of our new fundraising initiatives given the challenges that we have now during COVID. So in Niagara, there are over 10,500 people who are living with progressive dementia, the most common being Alzheimer's. Anyone can develop dementia, and it is fatal with no cure. At the Society this past year, we served 9,760 individuals. We received 1,998 new referrals and educated 9,750 Niagara residents and frontline staff on dementia. We saw a 200% increase in attendance at elder abuse presentations, provided over 12,400 hours of respite services to help prevent caregiver burnout, and had over 5,700 hours of volunteer service in our many programs. This year, we have seen an unprecedented challenge, and it is our mission to advocate for and with persons with dementia and their care partners, and provide access to a diverse range of appropriate resources and supports. We stand before you today, virtually at least, to deliver this message. COVID-19 is impacting our clients very significantly. People living with dementia are already facing deep stigmatization, and the isolation that they live with every day has become so much worse. In our client outreach, it's not uncommon for a person living with dementia or a care partner to tell us that the Alzheimer's Society are the only one that is checking in on them regularly. One telecare client said, "Thank you for calling. It gets so lonely. Please call me again. You can call me every day if you like." Care partners are also feeling very lonely right now. One told us, "I was doing okay until you called me. Now I'm so touched and emotional. No one has called me to ask me how I am, and I'm so grateful to you and the Alzheimer's Society for checking in on me." Another alarming message we would like to point out is that as of September the 17th, 64.6% of all the COVID deaths in Ontario are among long-term care residents. And in Ontario, 9 in 10 long-term care residents have some form of cognitive impairment, including 2/3 with dementia. Age is the biggest risk factor for dementia, and older people are the most at risk for this COVID-19. That is why now, more than perhaps ever before, we need to talk about dementia. It's imperative that people keep talking about dementia, seeking out information, advice, and support. Programs and services provided by the Alzheimer's Society, such as counseling, care partner education, and support groups, they help delay admission to long-term care and improve quality of life for people living with dementia and their care partners. Every year, we must fundraise over $500,000 to provide these essential services, which have been adapted and have continued throughout COVID-19. Also due to COVID-19, we've had to cancel many of our fundraising events. With these setbacks, as well as the uncertainty and changing landscape brought on by the pandemic, fundraising became much more difficult. So we responded by shifting gears and adapting to new innovative ways to raise much needed funds for our programs. The first fundraising initiative that we introduced this summer is called Social with a Purpose, which will replace our coffee break fundraiser. As social distancing and physical isolation become the part of our daily routines, we begin to understand the overwhelming feelings of loss and loneliness that is being separated from the community, how that can affect us. These are feelings that people living with dementia actually often experience in their normal day-to-day lives. Social with a Purpose is a do-it-yourself fundraising program, similar to what Coffee Break was, but the goal is now also to combat those feelings of loneliness and isolation. So it's important to find new creative ways to stay connected to our friends and family, and at the same time, raise funds to support important services to help ensure people living with dementia are not isolated. So the idea behind Social with a Purpose is to create a fundraiser that's unique and easy to participate in. To host a social is simple. All you need to do is become a host, sign up online at alzheimersniagara.ca/social. And then the fundraising event can be anything that you would like, from a coffee and conversation with friends online to a yoga class over Zoom. If online is not your preference, then you can also have the opportunity to host a small in-person, physically distanced, of course, event, as long as public health guidelines are maintained. Or you could even simply send cards and fundraising letters to some of your connections and past coffee break guests. Another key fundraising initiative that we are putting on this year is an entirely online silent auction. The auction began this morning on part of our World Day Alzheimer's celebrations, and it will run until the end of October, or actually the end of October 21st. The link to the auction website is 32auctions.com/ASNR. All of the auction items have been generously donated by businesses and individuals within the community, and include such items as Muskoka and Toronto sightseeing flights, autographed sports memorabilia, a designer handbag, food gift certificates, and so much more. And the last fundraising initiative that I'm going to briefly speak about is our raffle. The raffle opens today, and participants can win some great prizes, such as a romance package in Niagara Falls, donated by the Holiday Inn by the Falls and the Skylon Tower, a Roomba vacuum donated by Canadian Tire Niagara Falls, a case of wine donated by Glen Elgin Vineyard Management, and a foursome at a golf foursome at Peninsula Lakes Golf and Country Club. Well, that's a mouthful. So you can get information and purchase tickets at raffle.alzheimersniagara.ca or by calling the Society. So in conclusion, how can you help? Well, first of all, if you know someone living with dementia or a caregiver, please reach out to them and see how they're doing. Or if after months of social distancing, you get back together with an older adult in your bubble and you are worried about cognitive changes, please reach out to us. You do not need to wait for referral from a doctor to receive support from the Alzheimer's Society. We are here to help at any stage of your journey. This year is very different. It requires a lot of creativity, but believe me when I say that every bit counts, it does. You can help by hosting a Social with a Purpose fundraiser. You can also support us by donating or participating in our raffle and auction. Finally, you can spread the word to family and friends and keep the conversation going. In whichever way you can, we hope that Fort Erie will consider partnering with us to help us continue to support all those affected by dementia who need our support now more than ever. Thank you so much for your time and consideration in making a difference in your community today and making a difference in the lives of people living with dementia and their loved ones here in Fort Erie and the rest of the region.
Thank you very much, Ms. Radicic. And personally, I want to thank your organization for all the work that you do in Niagara. I know that there are many, many families and perhaps many of the people in tonight's meeting who have been touched by someone with dementia or Alzheimer's. Are there any members of council that have any questions? And as I said, Ms. Radicic, we do have a resolution on later in the agenda with respect to World Alzheimer Day, and hopefully someone or others will pick up your offer to host a social with a purpose event. Thank you very much.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Okay, that then takes us to the next delegation, and we have 3 on the same topic. And the next delegate is Helena Ciccone, or I would say Ciccone, but Ms. Ciccone, you can correct us on that.
So she's in the meeting. I'm just waiting for her to unmute and to start her video. She's sharing a device with Mr. Pardo.
Right.
Can you hear me now? There I am.
We can hear you and we can see you.
Okay, thank you. I had to use somebody else's iPad to figure this out. So should I start my presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay. Dear Mayor and council members, today I have 9 key points for your consideration of why an overwhelming majority of residents in Harbour Town have petitioned to limit a private driveway within our community not to exceed a width of 12 feet. In my presentation, I'll be using a local street as a comparative. Edgemere Road is a one-way from Craft Road towards Helena Street and is 12 feet 6 inches wide. It services well over 65 individual properties running along both sides of the roadway. Right now, Harbour Town has a 12-foot wide gravel and dirt laneway that starts behind Celebration Drive and runs all the way to Buttonwood. Its main purpose, to service only 2 backyard garages. You can see ruts of well-worn tire tracks following a path that is well within its 12-foot parameter. This laneway is within a 19-foot wide easement, but we believe that doesn't mean that the paving has to be 19 feet wide. Our community is very pro-green. Grass is more eco-friendly than asphalt. We prefer lush lawns, flower gardens, and landscaping over asphalt. We want to be good land stewards and practice sound environmental considerations that would minimize the negative impact on our environment. Black asphalt heats up more intensely during summer months and radiates hot, scorching temperatures throughout the community, while gardens and lush lawns keep our backyards cooler and provide an oasis of relief from the summer heat. Asphalt creates more runoff, while grass and gardens absorb the rain and at the same time help prevent excessive flooding. Throughout many forward-thinking regions of the world, local municipalities financially reward homeowners as an incentive to tear out paved driveways and replace them with more environmentally friendly designs that incorporate the use of grass. But today, according to the planning department, references have been made to revert the land back to its original 2003 bankrupt subdivision plan. Now, 17 years later, a 19-foot wide paved laneway must be incorporated back into our community. But why? With the 2003 plan, there was no room for gardens. The original plan was designed to accommodate cars, backyard driveways, drive-through laneways, and backyard parking. Today, not only is the planning department advocating to expand to the full easement width, but the new laneway must also become a two-way road. That change would most likely encourage cross-cutting drivers to cruise through our backyards. A two-way road will also physically divide our neighborhood. It will diminish our green space and displace the character and charm of our community that our resident gardeners have worked so hard to create. The planning department's justification, quote, when one car is driving in, the other car won't have to back up. All this for only 2 garages? So how did we get here? Why are we facing this issue now? In 2007, a new developer took over the subdivision with a new plan, a new name, and more new residents who would outnumber the original homes available in 2003. Mr. Campbell imagined something better for his new subdivision known today as Harbortown. He recognized that a setback clearance of only 4 feet for backyards and exterior side lots created safety hazards that would negatively impact future homeowners if he followed the original plans from 2003. To correct this problem, he turned all rear garages to face front of the lot. Once the homes were all sold, he then systematically divided laneway easements into apportioned pieces for each adjacent property. In 2016, Mr. Campbell applied for his final last amendment to complete phase 1 of Harbortown. He managed to close down all but 2 of the last remaining laneway easements in block 41 and 42. So what happened? A portion of the laneway in block 42 and a portion in block 41 running behind Celebration Drive to Buttonwood was not approved by the planning department. According to former planning director Rick Brady, and I quote, only one person has to object and the amendment doesn't pass, end quote. Mr. Campbell did not abandon the residents of Harbortown. In 2016, he was stopped dead in his tracks to complete his plans of addressing the issue of unsafe property setbacks and the elimination of obsolete laneways. In closing, I would like to state, if local roads such as Edgemere Road that are one-way and 12 feet wide are good enough for many Fort Erie residents, then why isn't it good enough for a backyard laneway with only 2 backyard garages? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Saccone. Are there any members of council that have any questions? Ms. Saccone, you made reference to the planning department, and I think you understand that there is a subdivision agreement and a site plan that was part of the development, and the subdivision agreement is registered on title. I think you understand that.
That subdivision plan was for 2003. And this is a private easement owned by Mr. Campbell now?
Well, when we met on Friday, I believe you understood that the subdivision agreement is an agreement between the developer and the municipality. I think you understand that, correct?
That the developer, Mr. Campbell of Harbortown, agreed to pave a 19-foot wide laneway that he was planning to close down and apportion different parts of the easement to accommodate safety hazards for lots that only had a setback of 4 feet from traffic going through.
Well, let me take another run at this. You understand what a contract is, I presume?
Yes, but I didn't see the contract, so I don't know in what context you're referring it to.
So the subdivision agreement would be registered on title, and when you purchased your lot, I presume that you had a lawyer?
Yes, I did, and nothing is registered against my title. It's only registered against one person in the whole
I think you'll find that the
block 41 and block 42, and that was a person who's the only last left original purchaser from 2003.
I think you'll find that the
She
subdivision agreement.
has that applied to her property, but anybody that bought a property from Mr. Campbell in the Starworks Harbortown development did not have any kind of contract put against their property. And I certainly don't. And I checked my title and my deeds through the land titles office, and there's nothing on it. And I checked everybody else, all my other neighbors' titles as well, and they don't have anything against their property. It's just one person from 2003 who was the original homeowner.
Suggest that you might want to speak to your lawyer with respect to the implications of the subdivision agreement as it relates to your property. But I appreciate your coming out. I appreciate the information that you provided to me and Councillor Zanko when we met you at your property on Friday. Are there any councillors that have any questions arising out of anything that I've asked? If not, thank you very much, Ms. Saccone. This may very well come up later on the agenda. We have two other speakers. The next delegation being Beverly Smithyman, one of your neighbors. Ms. Smithyman.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you, Ms. Smithyman.
I don't know where my picture is.
So there will be a camera icon someplace on your, what are you using? Are you using an iPad? Or
Oh, okay, I see.
bottom left corner, if it's a laptop.
There we go. I think. There we go.
There we go. Yep.
Sorry. Some of this might be a little bit repetitious. Mrs. Saccone said some of it, but anyway, here we go. Good evening, Mayor Redekop and councillors. My name is Beverly Smithyman, and I live at 16 Lake Breeze Court. I am representing myself and my neighbor Ray McNamara of 19 Lake Breeze Court. We are the only two homes that actually need to use the laneway. Both of us, and I specifically say both of us, have closing documents and deeds that give us complete and unrestricted access to blocks 41 and 42. I may have been one of the original owners here, but Mr. McNamara was a Starward purchaser, so that's that. I honestly don't know if any other residents have any similar stipulations regarding the lanes. Mr. McNamara owns a boat and trailer. In order for him to navigate the corner of blocks 41 and 42, he requires absolutely no less than a 15-foot clearance. I understood the blocks were also intended as access for emergency services. If so, ambulances and fire trucks would have to navigate that same corner. It should be taken into consideration that future owners of our two properties, whoever they may be, may also own boats, trailers, or motorhomes. There could even be future repercussions that have not even been considered here tonight. We both appreciate the predicament Mr. and Mrs. Saccone have found themselves to be in, and we are sorry it has caused so much stress and anxiety for them. The blame for that encroachment should be laid at the feet of the developer, Ward Campbell, who had no approval from the town planning department when Mr. Rick Brady was in charge and vetoed the proposals immediately. At the moment, and for many years previous, the laneways have been an eyesore of mud, gravel, and weeds. Since moving in on September 20th, 2004, I have been looking forward to having the laneways paved, as has my snowplow driver, sorry. This year, 16 years later, we are close to achieving this goal. Mr. McNamara and I are grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smithyman. Any members of council have any questions? So Ms. Smithyman, when I was at the site on Friday, I noticed that your garage actually faces in a kind of a northwest approach. So I'm presuming that when you come in from the northwest
I
off
come in
of,
from Buttonwood, sir, yes.
right, off of Buttonwood. And then when you leave, do you back out of the garage, if you're in the garage or your driveway, and then proceed east on this laneway? Or do you back out? And
I
then
proceed east and then north onto Celebration.
Right, right, okay. Okay, any other members of council have any questions? Thank you very much. That then brings us to the final delegate on this matter, Don Pardo. Good evening, Mr. Pardo.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for your time. I'm going to keep this very brief because it's just I'm repeating what's been already discussed. Although our situation is a little different, I'm representing myself at 730 Celebration and our neighbors, Patrick and Margaret Gay at 736, plus Dion Redekop at 45 Bardo. He is one of the only two people that takes access off of the extension of the laneway that's already been discussed. So I'm talking about the portion of the laneway that runs north off of Celebration between 730 and 736 Celebration Drive. And we're in the same boat. We have two driveways back, or sorry, two rear yard garages back there. The laneway at this point is a dead end laneway, 43 meters in length. It only, between the two homes, they generate less than 10 vehicle trips per day, and that would be on the high side. So we find it very interesting that we would need a 19-foot wide laneway to go through there with the appearances of a 2-lane roadway. Also, with the photos were submitted to council, if you look up the laneway from Celebration Drive, you'll see that there is actually a swing set at the very end of this dead end street. Anybody that's proceeding along the laneway would be have to turn around at the end of this laneway on private property. Also, anybody using this laneway would find that they would be in conflict with the swing set in the playground at the very end. So we're very concerned about bringing more traffic onto basically a 2-lane dead-end driveway. Other than that, that's basically all I have to ask.
Right. So, Mr. Pardo, you had explained that really the laneway, which is north of Celebration, opposite side of Celebration from the section that Ms. Ciccone and Ms. Smithyman are speaking about, really acts as a driveway for the two residences with the rear garage.
Absolutely, yes.
And they would be the only people that would have an interest in traveling on that section of road.
That's correct. Anybody else who would use it would be using it for parking or for playing games and stuff. And that's another concern that we do have, that there is small kids in this neighborhood now, and to provide them with a large area, paved area to play is a concern to us.
Okay, do any members of council have any questions of Mr. Pardo? If not, then thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your comments as those of Ms. Smithyman and Ms. Ciccone. That then takes us to the consent agenda. And I understand that Councillor Lubberts, you have a resolution regarding the consent agenda, but before we get there, are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? There being none, then Councillor Lubberts, would you like to move the consent agenda?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott, that council approves the consent agenda items as recommended.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to any of the items in the consent agenda? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I wanted to, is the consent agenda also under correspondence?
Yep. Which item?
A. Oh, no, not A. I'm sorry. B. The proclamation regarding the CN, Rail
Yes.
Safety Week. And I did have an opportunity to talk to Kelly Walsh. I'm sure when I see rail safety, it perks my interest. the rail crossings. And I know that Mr. Walsh has been in contact with CN a few times trying to get some answers in regards to rail safety. And since I'm now retired, I had a little bit more time to look into some things. And the year 2021 is a very important year as far as the railroad's concerned, because they have to upgrade all their rail crossings that required upgrades by 2021. I think they have a little extension now to 2022. So in the last several years, I think from 2014, they had to undergo a rail crossing study and information from all the different communities where there are rail crossings. So I will say that Fort Erie came up totally complete, which was really nice. He was saying, well, maybe you haven't heard back from us because we're missing some information. And he looked and he said, actually, Fort Erie, and this is the guy from CN said, Fort Erie's report was fine. It had, all the information they needed was there. And so that's really a feather in our cap, because I guess these forms are not all that easy to fill out. So we do have that. So we can, I don't know what the result of the crossing upgrade decisions for the different crossings in Fort Erie and Stevensville will be, but we should be keeping an eye on that. And I stress that this is Rail Safety Week. And I did forward Mr. Walsh, I guess you learn something every day. All these rail crossings actually have an address, so to speak. So the gentleman on the other end did give me some addresses for some of the rail crossings, so we can actually look to see what the recommendation for upgrades, if any, are there. And then, of course, if they don't want to upgrade some of these things, then we can maybe argue the point and hope that we can change their mind. But there's like 15,000 rail crossings across Canada. So we did kind of apologize on behalf of CN for not getting back to us, because we've been contacting them for about 18 months. But when there's 15,000 rail crossings in a very, very busy year, So anyway, so I did want to bring that up under rail crossings, and hopefully we will see some progress regarding the rail crossings here in town.
Anything further, councillors?
Nothing further.
Any other councillors? Okay, there being none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations contained in the consent agenda? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to reports. And the first report relates to the waterfront road allowance markers. And Councillor Zanko, I understand you have the resolution for that?
Sorry. Yes, I do. Thank you. I will need a mover for this resolution. Councillor Dubanow, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow. PDF 41-2020 waterfront road allowance markers, that council receives report number PDF 41-2020 for information purposes pursuant to a request made by council at a meeting on July 13th, 2020. And further, that council will consider the allocation of funding to replace and install waterfront property line markers through the 2021 capital budget deliberations.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to the report or the recommendations? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just on the waterfront park in Crystal Beach, I thought I seen it in here, but we gave some parking to the Palmwood, right? How for in our parking lot, how are we going to mark that off so that it's not going to interfere with parking?
I don't think that was part of this report, but Ms. Dolch.
Is Crystal Beach Waterfront Park not marked?
Well,
I saw it in here.
It's not, doesn't appear to be on this list. And I think you may be talking about something a little bit different, but it's an interesting question. Ms. Dolch, do you have any comments?
Through you to the councillor. Yeah, it is not listed on this list. It doesn't have waterfront property markers. We do have a lease agreement to lease parking spaces, and there is a map attached to that we haven't contemplated marking those out, what parking spaces are leased or not, through this report.
Councillor Lubberts.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mayor Redekop, just the thing that it's not marked is brings a couple concerns, because is that Ridgeway Road goes down to the waterfront and it goes to the water's edge. There's a road allowance. Are we saying that's not listed here either?
I don't believe it is listed, but that's a good point, and I think there are a couple of others. Ms. Dolce, did you want to comment on that? There is a public beach on the road extension of Ridgeway Road into the lake, adjacent to the parcel owned by the numbered company that we've been looking into, in the area affectionately known by those in the neighborhood as Stinky Beach. But that's not listed here at all.
Through you to the councillor and to yourself. Yes, it isn't listed. I can look into that further. You are correct. There is a piece of property that we do own there. I think when we looked at this, we were just identifying the ones that we had previously identified to see which ones were still in place and which ones weren't. But we can definitely add to this list should council wish to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts, anything further?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. And this might be a little bit off topic as far as this goes, but it's related closely. So I'm just curious as to, I see here that it says that we're going to be doing some surveying when we put these markers in. And so I'm curious to know, have we created and received a deed from land titles for Waterfront Park?
Okay, so are you talking, when you say waterfront park, are you talking about the actual park with the boat launch? Are you talking
The
about?
boat launch and the gazebo and everything, because we're going to have to be doing surveying. We might as well survey everything.
Well, that's not really a beach. And anyways,
It's a waterfront park.
it's a waterfront park.
Yeah.
Ms. Dolce, do you know
waterfront
whether,
park is listed
do
here.
you know whether this has been surveyed or whether we have a deed? I presume that we do have a deed, but I don't know that.
Through you to the councillor, I'd have to look into that further. I don't know the answer if we have a deed or not as well. I'm assuming we do, but I don't have it at hand at this point.
Okay, so perhaps you can provide that information to council at the next meeting. Anything further, Councillor Lubberts?
Yeah, no, I'm just there. If it's not, can we include it so that we can make sure that we get all that?
Can we include what?
The deed.
As part of what? This has to do with marking waterfront access.
Yeah, this year is they want to bring this forward for next year's budget. So I want everything included. The surveying of the property and make sure that we get the deed, because there's going to be some costs associated with that as well.
Then I think you should make an amendment to include that, because it's not included in the recommendations or in the report. So if you want Crystal Beach Waterfront Park to also be surveyed and marked, you should bring that forward as an amendment.
Okay, I'd like to make that amendment. Will we have to make the amendment for Ridgeway Road as well?
No, Ridgeway Road is already owned by the municipality and it's a waterfront road allowance. You're a little bit off, I think, on this one. However, it is a waterfront park. Is there a seconder to the motion to amend? Councillor Noyes? Any questions or comments or any discussion with respect to the amendment to include waterfront park in terms of road allowance markers? Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Your Worship. And perhaps a member of staff or perhaps even you can answer this question for me. Isn't the entire purpose of these waterfront markers to essentially mark out where public has access to the waterfront through road allowances or other areas to essentially clear up confusion related to private access? And when it comes to waterfront park, isn't that fairly obvious that it's a public park that you have access to? I'm just curious why we would need to put up these markers to signify public access when waterfront park has parking, a playground, a gazebo, and everything else. And I'm a little curious what that justification would be, and if maybe staff had some thoughts on that, because I'm confused.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor. Yes, I think where Councillor Lubberts was going was more from the parking side of it, the leased parking spaces. But they do lease the parking spaces from us, the Palmwood restaurant, but we do also, the public does also use those spaces if they're available and not being used by the Palmwood. So during hours of closure, things like that. So it's not necessarily delineated per se. It's kind of just the ability for them to utilize the restaurant and share our parking lot in that fashion. In terms of, I do agree with you, the park, there's really no delineation except for the Ridgeway Road allowance, where there's a separation between public and private property there, as the mayor indicated.
And if I may, your worship.
Yes, please do.
Now, my understanding is as well that when it comes to that other beach, as the mayor affectionately referred to, are we not looking into through, I'm thinking of land committee minutes that came up previously, is there not the possibility that there could be a purchase? And I'm just curious what would be the, you know, what purpose it would serve, if you will, to go to the effort of surveying this property and putting up those markers if we could potentially have transition in that area, both with the Palmwood being redeveloped and potentially the parking situation there changing, as well as the ownership of that other beach there potentially changing hands. And I just, again, what your thoughts might be on whether it's worth the effort at this time.
Councillor Dubanow, I wouldn't think that we would be marking many of these road allowances right now. This is now an issue that to a great extent is past us for this year, with the exception of those individuals who might walk down and walk along the shore. So I would presume that much of this work, including any consideration of the Ridgeway Road access, would be done sometime in the spring. But Ms. Dolch, perhaps you can enlighten us as to what the anticipated work schedule might look like.
Through you to the councillor. Once we go through the budget process, if council does approve the budget for this matter, we probably wouldn't get to, we would try to get to it before the beach season, early next year. We'd have to put an RFP to get that work done. So it would take some time. Ideally, it would be before the beach season next year to try to minimize encroachment onto private property as we had this year. But that's where we stand. And in terms of the potential purchase of that property, we just don't know if that's going to come to fruition or not at this point. So we would have to, depending enough, if it did, we would obviously not continue with the markings on that road allowance.
Okay.
Anything further, Councillor Dubanow?
No, I think that kind of gave me an idea. I appreciate that, your worship. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment that's been moved before I go back to Councillor Lubberts? If not, Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. As far as the park goes, itself, it's not so much to delineate it so that there's no confusion. It's a matter of, we created that property, we filled that all in, and we put fill into the lake. So now it becomes a park that the town of Fort Erie owns. Everybody knows that, but we don't have a deed for it. If we don't, we need a deed. So we need to find out if we've created a deed, and if we haven't created a deed, then we need to create a deed so that everybody understands that there's property there and we have a deed to that property, like any other property here in the town of Fort Erie. So that's where I'm getting at with the deed part.
Councillor
And
Lubberts, if that's the essence of your amendment, I would rule it out of order because it bears no resemblance to what we have before us in this particular report. That would be an item of new business if you wanted to raise it under new business. But if that's the thrust of the amendment, I would say that it doesn't fit this particular report.
well, the reason I brought it up, Mayor Redekop, is we have to go down there and survey anyway. So if you're out there with your surveyors, you might as well, at the same time, have your surveyors survey the property, and then we can go forward with creating a deed. Otherwise, the surveyors are going to be down there doing their job, and then we're going to hire them again and pay them to come down to Crystal Beach again and do more work. I just think that we could save a little bit of money, save a little bit of aggravation. Let's survey all the property at the same time.
So Councillor Lubberts,
If you were going to rule it out of order, that's fine.
I'm just looking for a solution for you with
But
respect to
it's
this.
important that we have a deed to that property if we don't have one.
You've already raised that, and that issue, Ms. Dolch has indicated she will be looking into and providing us with a response at the next council meeting, which I believe is October the 5th or thereabouts. That might, if we have a deed, then that responds to that concern of yours.
Yeah.
Then if you feel that there's a need for a survey at that point, or if we don't have a deed and there's a need for a survey, perhaps that's the most appropriate meeting at which to raise this issue.
Yeah, that's fine. And as far as the road allowance is concerned, if we're going to be making delineations on road allowances, right? That is a road allowance that's at the town. We can't be thinking that, well, we might buy some land in the future, so let's not put the delineators up there to show that where our property lines are. I don't know that in the waterfront master plan that we separated all of that. We said we want to mark what we own so everybody understands. If we own that road and there's no markers there, then it should be marked off, whether it's in Crystal Beach or whether it's in Crescent Park or whether it's in Fort Erie.
So now you're conflating issues. We've talked about Ridgeway Road, which is clearly a road allowance access to the waterfront. The Director of Planning has indicated that that will be added in terms of the work program when this is brought before budget. Correct, Madam, or correct, Ms. Dolch? You've indicated that you'll be adding the Ridgeway Road allowance.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I think we're covered on that, Councillor Lubberts. So I would suggest that when we get the answer from Ms. Dolch regarding a deed to the waterfront park, that would be the most appropriate time to look at whether we need a survey or whether there's something further that needs to be done from a legal perspective to ensure that we have solid title to that park. You
Okay.
agreeable to that?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so then you're withdrawing the amendment?
Yeah.
For now, thank you. So are there any other questions with respect to the report? Ms. Dolch, I noticed that both Bay Beach and Waverly Beach, which aren't road allowance points of access, do abut clearly against private property. And we do have signs up, at least at Waverly Beach on the west side. And I'm thinking that there's at least a private sign up on the west end of Bay Beach. Were these not included simply because they're not road allowance access points?
That's correct. They weren't included because they weren't identified in the waterfront strategy as road allowances. And that's what we kind of focused on, was those road allowances identified in that strategy.
And I noticed in the report on page 5, there's a listing of the number of markers that would be required. And then there's a line for extras. So it sounds like the budget will include the purchase of some extra markers in the event ones that are erected are damaged in the future, or there's an opportunity for some additional ones to be erected. Am I reading that properly?
That's correct. That's especially if some, we've obviously installed them previously, some have gone missing. So we wanted to incorporate some extras into that, should some be removed or, like you said, damaged or any.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't contemplate when we get to the budget, putting up some type of delineage along the west end of Waverly Beach or the west end of Bay Beach?
No, there's no reason. This was just to include waterfront road allowance markers, but if it's something council's interested in, we could definitely put that forward through, add that in and bring it forward to budget.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm thinking it's a road allowance. When you're in East Main Street here in Stevensville, I've brought that up a number of times. I don't think it's contentious. There's no neighboring, abutting property or whatever, but it is probably the nicest access to Black Creek that this town owns. Those of us know. Those of us who don't know, don't know. And it's actually a beautiful place to put your kayaks in. Actually, somebody even made a sign saying, kayak club, come join. And it's an area I think that's somewhat overlooked, and I don't know whether marking it would be a good idea, but I want to keep it on the map, that it should perhaps at some point in the future maybe have some kind of a sign that says, that this is a waterfront access, like a town waterfront access. It really is a beautiful spot. Like I said, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the nicest spots on Black Creek that very few people know about. And I'm pretty sure, since it's at the end of Maine, it's probably a waterfront access. It's right behind the pumping station, actually.
Yeah, I think we all know where it is. That would be, that's something that I think Ms. Dolce and your staff can contemplate. That could open up a lot of doors because we have a lot of creeks that intersect with a lot of roads and technically would be waterfront road allowances. So I think that's something that Councillor Noyes will leave with staff to contemplate.
That's fine. Thank you.
Anything further?
No.
Anyone else? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations in the report? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to PDS 42. And Councillor Dubanow, you
Yes.
have a resolution with respect to this.
Yes, I do. Councillor Zanko, would you be open to seconding this? Okay, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, PDS 42-2020, proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment 260-262 Gorham Road and 3854 Disher Street, Urban and Environmental Management Incorporated, Greg Terrace agent, Lucky Gas Incorporated, Nahib, I'm going to try, Quidwai. I hope I said his name right, and I apologize if I did not. Owner. That council approves the amendments to the town's official plan and zoning bylaw number 129-90 as detailed in Appendix 3 and Appendix 4 of report number PDS-42-2020 for the lands known as 260-262 Gorham Road and 3854 Disher Street, and further that council authorizes staff to prepare the necessary bylaws.
And before we open any discussion, I would confirm that anyone who spoke at the public meeting in council chambers in March, or who attended the public open house or provided written comments to council, did receive notice that this matter was going to be on our agenda this evening. And you will recall that we've received at least 3 emails with expressions of concern relative to the development. Are there any questions or comments with respect to the report? Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Butler. You know what, I'm going to start with Councillor Butler, it's her ward, and then Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I still have concerns with respect to this project. I feel bad for Najib because he's been working diligently on this for a few years now, but at the same instance, I have concern for the neighbors, especially now that he wants to remove the house that has been acting as a buffer for the other neighbors. So I won't be supporting this report this evening.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I'm also not going to be supporting this. I think I did not support it at the council committee either. I am concerned. I feel sorry for the gentleman that's going to have the car wash in his backyard. Pretty much. I think these studies, they are what they are. They take in the restaurant noise that might be created by the drive-through for that. It took in the car wash. Pretty much was what it was concentrated on. We do not have a clue until both these, with the development on the other side of the road, having more gas stations. I think there's going to be, well, this one's going to have 6, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how many are going to be on the opposite side of the road. And with the Friendship Trail being just feet away, I'm just concerned about the traffic, the turning of the left-hand turn lanes and not turn lanes, but people trying to make left. They say, well, should only be two cars waiting. Well, I don't know if they have a crystal ball. I'm sure there's some science behind it. I'm not sure if I believe the science behind it. So I'm not in support of this because I just think it's too busy at this particular area. There's too much going on in this small area. And I think that's kind of what council said a few months ago, was that it was just too busy. And I don't really see that he's changed much. I think he's changed perhaps the entrance to the site and a few changes here and there, but it's too busy. And the other thing that causes me concern is I know where they're supposed to put up signs and say, like, turn off your car, have your radio going. People may listen or may comply or may not. And from one of the comments that we have from some of the neighbors is that this particular area, they weren't great stewards to start with of the current thing. They talked about garbage and problems with maintenance and stuff. So if they haven't been good stewards in the past, what makes us think they're going to be good stewards in the future with telling people to turn off their cars and maintaining the signs and maintaining the queuing? So I'm not going to be in support of this. I think it's too much for this area. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. My feelings on this are a little different. I understand the concerns neighbors have, and my view towards what the proponent has done with regards to changing the plan is significantly different from Councillor Noyes. I think he's altered it quite considerably. He removed the entrance to Disher Street on and off. He reduced the size of the car wash. And from looking at the proposed site plan now compared to the previous one, I mean, the previous site plan, for lack of a better word, it was a bit of all over the place. It was like a mishmash, and it needed to be sorted out. And the new site plan addresses, at least in my opinion, many of those concerns. We no longer have that entrance. And again, I don't think it's perfect. I think site plan control, assuming this gets approved, once we get to that point, particularly with regard to vehicles in the drive-through queue, I think we need to find a way to block headlights. That can all be done at the site plan level. I'm not prepared to vote against this, particularly when there's another one going in across the street, when a lot of these concerns can be dealt with at site plan. So my approach is a little different. I think the proponent has gone out of his way to address a lot of these concerns. I think it needs to continue moving on one way or another. And I will be supporting this, knowing that this will be coming up for site plan and that our staff will be aware of these issues. And perhaps we can even go further there with site plan approval, but I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to weigh in? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I actually have the same point of view as Councillor Dubanow on this. I know that we looked at this on our recent planning meeting, and there actually has been a lot of changes that the developer has made. I know planning staff does have some concerns still that they're working with the developer on. And I agree with Councillor Noyes. Initially, it was just way too busy and way too much. And the new plans, I think, are definitely going to be more accommodating. I do have concern about the left-hand turn, though, and I'm hoping that because Ms. Dolch is hearing these concerns, she'll definitely take that into consideration. But I plan on supporting this as well tonight.
Any other councillors? Ms. Dolch, I've got a few questions. First and foremost is, among the other issues that I was concerned about last time around, aside from the busyness on the site with respect to everything that was being proposed, was the traffic. And one of the reasons this matter was deferred in March was so that a more expansive traffic study could be conducted to take into account not just the fact that there was going to be a facility at 260 to 262 Gorham Road and one across the street, but to take into account the fact that there's a lot of residential construction in Crystal Beach. There's a proposed mall at the end of Dominion Road, and there's development other places, and that some of the very commercial enterprises located on this property will attract other people to the site. So my question is, what has changed in terms of traffic between March and now that would suggest that it's appropriate to simply ignore the concerns that we had then?
Through you to the council or to the mayor, the traffic concerns obviously council had were future traffic concerns. The traffic study was done for the actual use of the site, and it did contemplate future growth in the traffic study. In terms of what council was hoping to receive from infrastructure staff was a larger scale traffic study on the outcome of Gorham Road long term, on how it was going to function long term. It's difficult, in my opinion, it's difficult to withhold a decision on an application when a traffic study has been provided with justification that there isn't a traffic impact. In terms of the long-term planning, obviously any new development that comes on board would also have to do a traffic study, especially if there's concern along Gorham Road. But I do appreciate council's concern long-term about Gorham Road. The difficulty was COVID did happen. It wasn't able to be done in an expeditious manner, and the traffic counts weren't able to be done this summer due to the fact that it would have produced a lower traffic count at this point. So I don't know if the Director of Infrastructure has any further comments on maybe timing of that study, but right now we're kind of up in the air, and we wanted to see if this application could move forward given the traffic study they've provided.
So Ms. Dolch, I'm pretty confident you're not suggesting that because there's been a pandemic which has interfered with the completion of a study that at least the majority of council was very interested in obtaining because it's additional information that would assist us in making a decision, that we should simply say, oh, well, let's go ahead anyways. I don't think that concerns that we had then are still concerns that we have now, and they haven't been addressed. So how can we in good conscience proceed other than to say, well, we didn't really need that information after all?
To the mayor, really it's up to you ultimately. Obviously we provide you with the best advice we can at the time. At the time we felt satisfied with the traffic study that was provided, but I do appreciate council was looking for that information. So obviously you do have a choice to make this evening if the current traffic study isn't something that you can stand behind. If you need further study on the entire Gorham roadway, that's something you'd have to obviously look at and consider during your deliberations.
You know, I'm going to ask Councillor McDermott, I'm going to ask if you would take over the chair, because I feel I have to make some comments here, and I've got a lot of questions, but I think I'm going to have to make some comments too. So could I ask you to take over the chair so that I can continue and step out of my impartial mode?
Okay, Your Worship.
Thank you. So I note that in the report on page 2 and 3, there's a reference to the significant changes that have taken place, but we're still in a situation where there are additional things taking place at this property which the current zoning doesn't permit. And there is a lot of stuff. It's true that there's been some reorganization and reorientation, but I took a look at, I think it's Appendix 2, which is on page 17 of the report. I think, yes. And I'm fascinated to contemplate the flow of traffic on this site from Gorham Road onto the site, from the site onto Gorham Road. And it could be that vehicles will come in, go for gas. It could be that they'll just go for food at the restaurant, the drive-through. It could be that they'll go to the car wash. And then when they're coming out of the car wash, it looks to me like there'll be some conflicts with respect to traffic on the site, either coming off of Gorham Road or heading towards the drive-through. And then there's, of course, the little restaurant and the traffic that has to maneuver there. I just don't see how the traffic is supposed to flow without some significant conflicts. Ms. Dolch, has any information been, through you, Chair, has any information been provided on that, how this traffic is supposed to flow on this site?
Dolch.
Through you to the mayor. So the traffic on the site, obviously, we've looked at it in quite a bit of detail. Right now, in terms of entrance and exits to Gorham, it's just one large entrance. Obviously, we are looking at shrinking those entrances down to try to control traffic and speeding into this facility and site that currently occurs, to try to direct traffic a little more calmly into the site. The restaurant facility obviously would be the first entrance, depending on, if you were going to the restaurant facility. The second entrance is more for the gas bar. You're going to have people transversing the site, going to the gas station, going to the car wash. But the majority of users that would go to the restaurant would use the first entrance from closest to Disher. Obviously, it's the closest point of access. We didn't really see any conflicts, as you're mentioning, but if there's something of concern, please let us know and we can have a look at it through the site plan process a little more detailed if there is a concern. I also did want to mention there is the consultants on the line available for questions if you needed a more detailed response.
So Chair, if I might continue, if I look at the access point off of Garrison Road, we'll say the southerly access point, the one closest to Disher. So vehicles will be coming off of Gorham Road. They'll have to go around the south side of the restaurant to get to the parking area behind the restaurant, which means that they'll be in direct conflict with vehicles coming out of the drive-through, which presumably would be going to the same point of access or egress, unless they go around the east side of the restaurant, which would then put them in conflict with vehicles coming from the gas bars, I would presume, and potentially the vehicles going to the car wash. If one looks at the northerly point of access on Gorham Road, you've got vehicles coming in to go to the gas station or presumably to go around the gas bars to the drive-through restaurant. And you've got vehicles coming out of the car wash going west. So there's a conflict there. And that doesn't include the vehicles that might be coming out of the drive-through that decide they want to go either to get their car washed or then they're going to pick up gas. So it's all well and good to have the consultant here to give us an explanation as to how this traffic works. I'm just skeptical. It is a lot of stuff. It has been reduced. I'll grant that. They have eliminated the drive-through off of Disher Street, which is helpful. Then we've also got the vehicles that will be coming in, the service vehicles to serve the restaurant and to serve the gas needs, so that this just really looks to be too much stuff on too small a parcel. And then we haven't addressed yet the concerns that I had about the traffic let's assume that, or let's hope that next summer we don't have to deal with COVID, and let's hope that there'll be lots of people going to Bay Beach. This is the main entrance into Crystal Beach, down to the beach, for everyone except those who would have some understanding of back ways that you can get to the beach. There'll be a lot of traffic and a lot of potential customers in and out of this site and the one across the street. So I've got concerns about that. To be, I guess, more pointed, I give credit to the property owner, the developer who wants to do all of this stuff. And there undoubtedly will be some aspects that are beneficial to the community. But I think from my perspective, you have to take a look at the broader picture. How does this fit into a larger scale? And it seems to me that the report and the recommendations here don't look at a broad enough picture. They look at the site, they look at what's there now, they look at what could be there. They obviously have identified the need for amendments to be approved by this council and somewhat minimize the potential impacts on the neighborhood. I think we have some obligation to look at the impacts on the neighborhood. The other thing that I noticed, Mr. Chair, and perhaps Ms. Dolch can comment, is that on page 8, there's a reference to further noise feasibility study being done when it's been decided what the restaurant's going to look like. Or maybe it suggests that the restaurant may not be constructed. Do we have any information on that?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. So in terms of the noise study, it evaluated the car wash because that was the main concern, thrust of concern. The drive-through wasn't necessarily a concern from a noise perspective. The car wash was closer to the residential properties at this point in time. But we would, through the site plan process, like to see that noise study also be done for the drive-through facility to ensure any further mitigation if it's needed at the time. It's more of a site plan matter at this point in time. It is further away, obviously closer to Gorham Road, but we would like to see that as we move forward through the site plan process, just to ensure that noise mitigation is mitigated.
With respect to the impacts on the Friendship Trail with the extra traffic that we're talking about, and I know that there's been discussion about there being a specific type of pedestrian crossover at Gorham Road and the Friendship Trail. Who will be responsible for paying for that pedestrian crossover?
Ms. Dolch?
I don't know if the director of infrastructure can jump in at this point. I'm not sure. I believe it was the town, but I'm just going to confirm with him.
And Mr. Wells?
We've carried the cost for that through a capital program. An operating budget item in 2019. So the funds are still earmarked for that. They should be installed in the spring.
Okay, so that's the town that's paying for that.
Yes.
And then there's comments from the region about Gorham Road being on the bicycle route. I guess my question would be, how are we going to resolve the conflicts that will develop between traffic, pedestrians on Gorham, pedestrians on the trail, trail use by others, bicycles on the trail, bicycles on Gorham Road? How's that all going to be resolved?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. So these occur everywhere. Obviously on Garrison Road, it happens. There's a bicycle route along Garrison Road as well. And we've just approved obviously 3 drive-through facilities there as well. But we just make sure when we're looking at the bike lanes, obviously as you ride along a bike lane, you are responsible to ensure your own safety as well. But we do make sure that there's appropriate sight lines and things like that that they have so that there isn't a conflict with that future bike lanes if they are installed in the long-term future by the region. But we do have a number of entrances and exits. Obviously across the street also has an entrance and exit. Joe's Value Mart has an entrance and exit. So as they plan that bicycle route, we would look at that. And there is obviously the pedestrian crossing or the cycle crossing at the Friendship Trail that the town will be looking at to ensure the safety along that trail system.
Your worship.
So this all boils down to the fact that I've got a lot of concerns and questions still. And I know that we're anxious to have development. I know that we're anxious to provide services to our residents where some of the services don't currently exist. I also know that we're interested in making sure that we protect neighborhoods. So I'm going to move that we defer this report until such time as we have the traffic study that was requested in March of this year to provide us with some better insight into how the traffic is going to be managed in this area. I would need a seconder for that, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Butler? Question? Councillor Noyes? You're muted.
I was seconding it.
Yeah, Councillor Butler got ahead of you there.
Okay, that's all.
So I guess we're going to wait until when, Your Worship, on the timing? And I'll get to you, Councillor Zanko.
To the completion, till we have a traffic study, till the traffic study has been completed. I'm not sure when that would be, what the timing on that would be, but that would be, and then staff can report back to us.
Now, Your Worship, before we go any further with that, is that going to be incumbent on the bridge opening or, because that could be quite a while?
I think it's got to be a traffic study that will take into account what the traffic flows would be other than during COVID-19 restrictions. So we had anticipated doing it in, I believe, in the summer, primarily because that's when there would be a lot of traffic, particularly with respect to the beach. And you're right, the American residents. So I don't see this traffic study really being done in a meaningful fashion until next summer, to be honest with you.
Okay, Kelly, did you want to comment?
I'm just going to repeat what the mayor said there. That's our timing. Our plan was to do it this year. The unknown financial impacts of COVID precluded us from completing the project. We put it on the back burner. I noted to council a few weeks ago that we have taken a number of projects and brought them forward again. It has not been to the RFP stage, but the mayor is quite correct. We would like to do a summer of real traffic to see where we are in order to complete this project. This study.
Thank you. Okay, so before we vote on it, Councillor Zanko?
It's only to the timing, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was regarding the timing and that was answered. Thank you.
Okay. So all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. I hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. That then takes us to new business inquiries. Are there any inquiries? Councillor Zanko and then Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Dolch. Just a question with regard to the delegations that we had this evening. I know Ms. Dolch and her team have been spending a lot of time with residents trying to find a consensus, and we've seen tonight how difficult that is. So I first off wanted to thank you for that. But my question is, I know that I've heard from the residents that I've spoke to that have had concerns, more so with regard to traffic going down that road. And I know one of the delegations this evening, his concern was with regard to, kids playing on these laneways. Why could we not, or could we have private road signs at both sides of the laneway to kind of alleviate that concern? And if we can, is that something that I would need to bring forward?
Ms. Dolch.
Through you to the councillor. It just wasn't part of the original subdivision design, but it's not to say that it can't happen. It is private property. It's not a public laneway. It's not owned by, it's not a public roadway. So we could, you could look to install those signs. In terms of the monies we have from the subdivision agreement, obviously we have enough to cover the works of that subdivision, but anything else would be above and beyond.
Okay.
Zanko.
And how much, through you, your worship, how much would a sign like that cost at each entrance? I think you'd be looking at 4 signs.
Through to Councillor Zanko. I'm, to be honest, I couldn't tell you the cost of the sign. I don't know if Mr. Walsh maybe can help me out. I know we did install beach signs at for private property, and I'm wondering if he kind of had a cost to that. Hate to put him on the spot, but if he could assist me once again.
Yeah, Mr. Walsh, it'd actually be 3 signs, one at each end of the one south of Celebration, and then I think there's only 1 required for the laneway north of Celebration, because I think it's a dead end. Mr. Walsh?
Signs are typically a couple of $100 each.
Sir Zanko.
Okay, and so, and I know you had mentioned that obviously that couldn't be included in the retainer that we're using to complete the work. So I'm wondering, I could certainly bring that forward for council's consideration. Is that something that I would have to do, your worship, through a notice of motion?
You would have to do that, and yes. Do you have further questions with respect to this particular issue?
I do, yes.
Let's deal with those, and then we'll come back to your question about the signs.
Okay, perfect. And my next question is with regard to the width. I know that we have heard from all the delegations this evening, the 3, not opposed to a laneway, but just hoping that the width, aside from the residents that are impacted the most, they said at least a 15-foot width. But what is the current width that you're at? Because I think there's some confusion around the shoulders being inclusive in this, and just the laneway itself. So I've heard so many feet kind of being thrown away, from 14.5 to 15 to now 19. I just wondered if you could give us some clarity on that.
So Councillor Zanko, the width of the laneway as shown in the plan is 6 meters. The paved portion is 4.5 meters with a 0.75 meter shoulder paved on each side. I believe that's what you advised, Ms. Doltz. Is that correct? It all works out to 6 meters.
That is correct. Normally shoulders, in not all cases are shoulders paved. Usually sometimes they're gravel, but in this case it's paved. So it ends up being a full 6 meters of pavement, but it is exactly as the mayor indicated.
Councillor Zanko.
So, and further to that, your worship, I know that we are governed by the plan of subdivision, and we have to complete the work according to that plan of subdivision. Is your staff currently looking at decreasing that width, or is that basically what we have to do?
Councillor Zanko, I think the best answer to that would be that there has been consideration given to this. I spoke to the CAO earlier today about the concern as to the municipality's obligations relative to the subdivision agreement. And once the developer defaulted and we then cashed the security in order to complete the plan, what the town's obligations are. So it may be appropriate for council to ask staff to consult a lawyer with respect to what the municipality's actual obligations are, whether we could direct staff to pave less than 6 meters. And if so, what latitude would we have? So you might want to consider that route. And you could move that right now if you wished.
Okay, I would like to move that, actually.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor McDermott? Are there any questions or comments with respect to the motion, which is to ask staff to consult or obtain a legal opinion with respect to the municipality's obligations under the subdivision agreement at whatever this development is now called? Is it called Harbortown now, or is it? What's it called, Ms. Dolch?
Erie Beach.
Still Erie Beach. It was Erie Beach when I was a kid, and it's still Erie Beach. Okay, are there any questions or comments? If not, all those, oh, sorry, Councillor Noyes.
Just a question, what would this request to the lawyer possibly cost us? Do we have a ballpark? Like if it's going to cost $20,000 to get an opinion, or I probably wouldn't vote for it, but if it's going to cost us maybe $1,000.
I don't think we're going to be hiring a Bay Street lawyer to do this opinion, so I would expect it's going to take, I can't imagine this taking much more than an hour or two for a lawyer to sort out. Have to look at the subdivision agreement, presumably would have some knowledge of contract law and then could give, and municipal law. So I shouldn't think more than a couple of hours, you know, $800 maybe.
Okay.
I don't want to be held to that because it could be that, anyways, unless Ms. Dolch, unless you've got a better estimation.
No, I think your estimation is pretty close. I would say it should be under about $1,000 anyway, for the amount of time. And we do have a development lawyer that we use consistently on all developments that handle our subdivisions agreements and things like that. So we would look to him to review that.
Any other questions?
No, nothing further.
Thank you. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And you'll have to rein in on me if this is out of order, because I'm not sure if this question it's related to this, but it's more for information purposes. And perhaps if it is in order, through you to Ms. Dolch, I'm just wondering, we have other subdivisions or other areas of town that have laneways, and I'm thinking Dufferin, Jarvis up in the north end. Just for my own clarification, what are the width of them? I'm just curious. And again, I see Your Worship smiling there, so I'm not even sure if this is in order, and if it's not, please cut me off. I'll ask it as an inquiry after.
It's an interesting question, and I think it's pretty clear that they're not 19 feet, they're not 6 meters, but it's somewhat beside the point. I think the example provided by the one delegate that Edgemere is 12 feet, that's probably helpful. But Ms. Dolch, or Mr. Walsh, if either of you knows the width of the laneway between Dufferin and Phipps, or Jarvis and Courtright, by all means, they would love to have those paved, by the way, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon. I think that it'd be significantly less than 6 meters. I'm pretty confident, Councillor Dubanow.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Any other questions with respect to the motion to request a legal opinion with respect to the town's obligations? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Zanko, you still have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Just one question that I probably should have asked before that passed. How far will that, or how much of a delay will that legal opinion have on the completion? Because I know there is some residents that are looking forward to completion as well.
I'm going to ask Ms. Dolch that, but I can guarantee that it won't be another 17 years. Ms. Dolch.
Okay.
Through you to the councillor. No, unfortunately, our lawyer at this point in time is just on vacation for a short period. He'll be back later this week, and he's very efficient and will, I'm sure, get us a response within the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Zanko?
No, thank you.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. One question about, and I did have a chance to talk to Ms. Dolch earlier about the timeline on the Stevensville Mini Park. And it was delayed last year because of something other than COVID. Now it's delayed again this year from COVID. I know some of the residents are looking, do we have any, I know we are hoping that it's going to be this fall, but if we can have any encouragement that this is actually going to happen. Do we have any idea?
Ms. Dolch, can you provide a comment?
Through you to the councillor, we are waiting. It's the park equipment that we're waiting for. Because of COVID, they were significantly delayed. We still don't have a timeline from them. Again, all we can offer at this point is fall, but I will have the manager of community planning follow up with them to see if we can get you a more concise date in terms of delivery of that park equipment.
Thank you. And one other question, and it came up in a report earlier today, the corporate software review. I was going to ask it then and I forgot. This is also going to include the rural needs for those the residents are in the rural.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out, and I think we missed part of what you asked.
Okay, well, I thought you agreed with me, so.
Well, I may very well agree with you.
The corporate software review that came up earlier, and I was going to ask it at that time, and I didn't. That's also going to somehow encompass the need for rural residents to be able to access both for us to access them and for them to access us. Am I correct that review is that's going to be part of that review?
You know what, Mr. Cook, do you want to take a run at that, or should I ask Mr. Davis?
No, I'll be happy to take it. Through your worship to the councillor, this corporate review, software review, is an internal review of our own software. So over the years, as we've grown as a corporation, we buy software for specific needs. And over time, they don't necessarily all work together. And there may be packages out there that were better suited for us as a corporation. So that's what this review is. It's not internet speed. That's a whole separate issue that we're trying to deal with. Recently, the EDTS has put out a survey to residents to find out where those needs are and what people presently have. Prior to this, we did a business survey as well. So this is an internal software review only.
Okay, thank you.
So Councillor Noyes, just a couple of points. Since the pandemic, it looks like the broadband service providers seem to be a lot more interested in expanding their services. There's more federal and provincial money. We have provided letters of support to at least 3, I believe, service providers to assist them in their applications for funding from the upper levels of government. We've had some active discussions with Bell, with Cogeco, with NRBN, and it looks like they're interested in moving into some areas specifically. I don't know that I can share areas that some of them have identified right now, but I will endeavor to get out an email to members of council sometime later this week to kind of give you a bit of an update as to what's happening. Because that's a very, very significant issue now for everybody. But when I say everybody, I mean everybody in Canada that particularly doesn't have access to fiber or broadband. The other thing that I wanted to say before we get too far away from you, Councillor Noyes, is that the residents in the neighborhood of the Stevensville Mini Park should be assured that the money's been set aside. It's not a matter of us not wanting to do the work, as Ms. Dolch had mentioned. It's just a matter of getting the equipment. So hopefully they'll appreciate that we're in unusual times and things don't always work as well as we would hope. Are there any other members of council that have any new business or inquiries? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I just wanted to comment on the letter that was sent out by Councillor Butler. to one of our, the SPCA's former board members. And there's some statements in here that that aren't accurate. And Councillor Butler goes on to say in the letter that there's some training that's not provided by the SPCA. There's some legislated mandated policies and dedicated training associated with those policies. And there's none of them in place at the SPCA. And she goes on to list some policies that, the way I read it, she's saying that the SPCA doesn't have. And for instance, WMIS. SPCA has WMIS. She goes on to say first aid. The SPCA has staff that's trained in first aid. Workplace violence and harassment prevention. SPCA has those policies in place. Workmen's Safety Insurance Act, SPCA pays the premiums to Workmen's Safety Insurance Board. Accessibility for Ontarians, SPCA has that. She says there's no adequate training for individuals carrying out euthanasia, and SPCA has been investigated by Animal Services. Animal Services has no problem with the training that's been provided by the employees. She claims there's no due diligence at the SPCA, which is not true. And there's no intake systems documentation for those systems, and that's not true. She also stated in her letter that the manager at the SPCA told the town of Fort Erie that the SPCA does not need our contract, speaking with the animal control contract, and to basically feel free to cancel it. And the manager of the SPCA did not say that. That is an outright lie, Mayor Redekop. That was never said by the manager. It's been verified that it wasn't said by the manager. And I just wanted to bring that up, Mayor Redekop, because this issue needs to be attended to by yourself, right? Because we can't have councillors going out there making statements that aren't accurate and making statements that aren't true. Thank you.
So Councillor Lubberts, it would have been helpful if you had a concern about this, if you'd have brought it up whenever that letter was sent out. Was it an email or a letter? In any event, the one of the motions that's on tonight's agenda that's going to be adjourned was to ask for the SPCA to provide whatever its policies and procedures are on these various points. I'm going to let, I don't disagree with you that councillors should be cautious in the things that they say and should try to be accurate in the things that they say. I'm going to go to Councillor Butler since you've referenced her with respect to her message. And I'm going to ask Councillor Butler, was that an email or a letter that Councillor Lubberts is referring to?
Thank you, Your Worship. That was a letter that I sent in response to Miss Braden, who is a board of director, who sent an email to us and a letter directly to you. So I did respond to that, and I have actual testimonials from 3 employees that are currently working there that said that they have never been trained in any of those areas, and there have never been any sign-offs. And so I am going specifically on their word and the word of former employees. So I can absolutely provide those names in the future if they'd like that reference. Also, I do want to correct myself. Jeff Stevenson, who is no longer with the Corporation of the Town of Fort Erie and who was the coordinator of bylaw, did say in a meeting in front of Councillor Zanko and in front of the CAO. I'm sorry, I got the person mixed up. I thought it was the CAO, but I stand corrected. It was Jeff Stevenson, and I'm sure that the CAO and both Councillor Zanko can attest to this, that he did say that at the previous, at the signing of the contract, she did say that they don't need this contract to be able to fulfill it, which I find very interesting, Your Worship, because the contract is $154,000 per year, plus the revenues that they get for dog tags, which actually adds up to an additional $150,000. So it's $300,000, which is, I think, close to half their budget, if not a little bit more. And those numbers were just relayed to me through the new coordinator of bylaw, Mr. Chidoba. So, you know, I don't write things if I don't have proof to back me up.
Councillor Butler, I wasn't sure what your response was to the issue about whether the SPCA needed the contract or didn't, except, did you say that Mr. Cookett would have been aware of that, or it was said in his presence, or not?
Oh, I thought it was Mr. Cookett that had told us that in the meeting, but it was actually in the presence of Jeff Stevenson.
Because my understanding is Mr. Cookett has never heard such a statement. Is that
No,
correct, Mr. Cookett?
To your worship, to you, your worship. I don't recall that statement, but I would have to go back. This is quite a while ago when we had the meeting with Mr. Stevenson. I'd have to go back and check my notes to see if it was actually stated or not. I know I didn't make that statement. There again, Mr. Stevenson may have said it, but I'd have to look at my notes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so let's.
And I'm surprised that you don't remember that, because we did sit there dumbfounded at that fact. And
Okay.
that was when you did respond with respect to the fact that who would we actually go to then? Who is there in town? But there are other services. There's the Niagara South SPCA that could step in quite easily, who does have all the systems in place. So I don't see a problem with that, but at any rate.
I'm gonna move on,
That.
unless you had something further, Councillor Butler, on another issue.
On another issue, yes, I do have a question, Your Worship, to Ms. Dolch with respect to the Airbnb. Are we going to be receiving an updated report with respect to that? I think we were looking at monitoring it this year.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor. Yes, we're trying to get something to you before the end of the year with the results, if not early next year, but we will give you the result of the program, as well as the enforcement that has been undertaken this year in terms of short-term rentals.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Councillor Butler?
Yes, so it's come to my attention that there's this new terminology called ghost hotels. I don't know if you've heard of that.
It's not new terminology. It's people that are taking advantage of the situation and actually running what are similar to multiple arrangements that look like a hotel but aren't regulated like a hotel.
Right. So it's 2 to 3 day turnovers, and operating it as more of a commercial business as opposed to even short term for 7 days or 10 days. So I wonder if we can, when that update comes through, if we can take a look at that and see, make the comparison to what the municipalities the other municipalities are doing in terms of putting strict guidelines in. And I know that your guideline in the beginning had those strict, you had to actually be there and be on the premises. So I'm wondering if we could revert back to that. Anyway.
Yeah, that's an issue that will be timely when we receive the report from staff. I don't know how helpful it will be because this was an ordinary year for short-term rentals, I'm sure. But certainly the decisions we made last year were intended to be reviewed after we had 1 full year of activity. So that's certainly something that you can bring back for us to consider at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Anything further, Councillor
I do.
Butler?
I have one more question, Your Worship, for the Director of Planning. And I know that Mr. Chidoba is working on a report with respect to the SPCA. And just wanted to confirm with you if in that report there's going to be discussions with respect to the possibility of terminating the contract with the SPCA and what the legalities associated with that will look like. I'm pretty sure that during the discussion that I had with him a week and a half ago that that he was looking at that as well.
Well, I think I don't recall exactly what the wording of your motion was, Councillor Butler. It was a few meetings ago, but I would presume that the report will include whatever was referenced in your report. Ms. Dolch, if you have any additional information, please provide it, but I would think that the report would conform to the motion.
Through you to the council, that's correct. It will conform to the motion based on the wording of that motion.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Butler?
No, that's it, Your Worship. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Zanko, you had your hand up.
Yes, I did, Your Worship. Thank you. I just wanted to further comment with regard to the statement that Councillor Lubbert had made in reference to the email Councillor Butler had sent. When we originally did have our meeting with Jeff Stevenson, what he said was the last time the contract was up for renewal, the SPCA indicated that they could sustain themselves without the contract. So I'm not sure, you know, if maybe that put some light on it, but that was what I recall from the initial meeting.
That's for somebody that makes a living out of words, that's slightly different implication than they don't need the contract. In any event, anything further, Councillor Zanko?
No, thank you.
Any other new business or inquiries? Then that takes us to notices of takes us to motions. And Councillor McDermott, could I again hand the chair to you by any chance?
Your Worship?
And I need a seconder for my motion. Is anyone prepared to second it? Councillor Zanko.
Councillor Zanko.
Thank you. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
I move, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that council amends council rules of procedure bylaw number 36-2016 so that rule 18.12E relative to debate in council and committee meetings will conform with rule 11.6B relative to debate in regular council meetings, which reads as follows. This is 11.6B. No member of council shall speak a second time if a member who has not spoken wishes to speak for a first time, and no member shall speak more than twice to the motion without council's consent. May I just briefly speak to that, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So this is really designed to make sure that there's adequate opportunity for councillors to question the reports that come before us in council and committee meetings. We're getting to the point where because we've reduced the number of meetings that we have, regular council meetings, council and committee meetings, we're getting, as we did this evening, regularly numbers of reports on our council agenda, regular council agenda, and we deal with them as if we were in regular council. It doesn't seem to me to be any reason why that couldn't take place in committee meetings so that there's at least continuity with respect to the rules of debate in situations where we run into difficult matters or there are issues that need and require a bit more discussion or debate or inquiry. Then I can, this would provide that council can provide that latitude. So that's really the essence of my motion to amend the rules so that we've got some continuity.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I understand the theory behind this, but I also always felt that council and committee meetings should be a little less structured. I guess is the word I'll use, so that if the counselors do have more, do have more questions they can ask, particularly because it seems to be in council committee more give and take. And I know that there's been several times where if you're the first one to speak, and then you speak a second time, but there's more information that comes later on from another source that hasn't spoken yet, you cannot address that. You cannot ask questions regarding the new information that's come forward. For the person who perhaps has spoken the fourth time, or kind of jumps in at the last minute and says, "Oh, by the way, did you know this?" And you've already spoken twice, you can't speak again. The other thing is that I don't feel that because we have fewer meetings, we should then feel more restricted in our discussion. And, I understand timing is an issue, but I think there's only been a few meetings. We've almost been together now 2 years, believe it or not. And I think we've been pretty cordial 95% of the time. There's a few meetings where things do kind of, get, long discussions that perhaps could be minimized more. But we always do have the tool in our tool chest to call the question. So if things are running, a little bit long and there's a lot of repetition, someone can ask to call the question, which basically then the rest of council can decide to agree with that motion to call the question, and the discussion stops. So you do have that tool. That's used very rarely, I will say, but it is there if we need it. So I'm not in support of this because I would hate to see the discussions curtailed because of fewer meetings. But that's my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to have to agree with Councillor Noyes. And, we're here to represent the town of Fort Erie. We're here to represent our residents. And if there's a debate that needs to be had, and if it takes a little longer and we end up with a lot of questions that need to be asked, then during the council and committee meetings, that's when those questions need to be asked, and that's when the debate takes place. Now, when you move into regular council meeting, the debate has already been taken place. So I can understand councillor speaking twice on a motion during a regular council meeting. But, we've reduced the amount of meetings that we're having every year, right? We reduced the amount of time that a councillor can speak. Now you can only speak for 5 minutes, right? And now you're going to reduce the amount of questions or how many times you can speak when you're debating. And that might be all well and good for the mayor to take that away from councillors, but I'm not willing to take that away from the entire residency of Fort Erie. And I'm not going to support this because I believe that debate is good and it's healthy for a community. And if you're going to take away the debate, then you might as well just have regular council meetings and we just rubber stamp everything.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. Councillor Butler, and then Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For someone who uses her words and is choosy about her words and to make sure that she has evidence of the fact, I'd like to say that I support the mayor in his quest here, because I find that there are a lot of councillors who pontificate and rather than to get to the point of the matter, and do not do their homework ahead of time so that there is a healthy debate on the floor as opposed to an exaggeration of truths. So I am supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to be supporting the mayor's motion, and the reason why I am is there's one reason. Councillor Noyes mentioned that we have the ability to call the question, and that is very true. We do. Likewise, we would also have the ability to grant a member of council the ability to speak 3 times, 4 times, 5 times if it is necessary. If it is not a situation, although I would not perhaps use the same words if it was perhaps a situation similar to what Councillor Butler described. Council as a body, we are not a rubber stamp. We make decisions, and every decision that we make here is an well, I hope anyway, is an educated decision based on the information that is provided to us in our reports and by staff. And likewise, if we're sitting in a council and committee meeting, we can make an educated decision as a body as to whether we want a member of council to have an ability to speak additional times. We do not lose that ability. And for that reason, I am supporting the mayor's motion tonight.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I understand what Councillor Dubanow was saying, and it'll be very interesting to see how evenly balanced that is when you can speak a third time.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. Your worship.
Chair, I know Councillor Zanko hasn't spoken yet. I don't know whether she intends to. If not, I'd like to speak then. Just, I've been around now for quite a while, and I've chaired meetings that have gone, I think even this council had one that went to midnight. I used to chair meetings regularly, and Councillor Noyes was there with me, where we had a lot of meetings that went late. There's nothing wrong with meetings that go long. There's nothing wrong with having a packed agenda, and there's nothing wrong with councillors voicing their views and asking questions. I don't disagree with that at all. I don't envisage a situation where councillors are going to be arbitrarily cut off if they've had an opportunity to raise the questions and the issues that they wish and make the comments that they want. But I think we all have an obligation, quite correctly, to represent the residents and to represent the residents with some focus. And so our council, I agree that there's a distinction between council meetings and committee meetings. My only point in making the reference was that we've had, I think, 4 or 5 reports on this evening's agenda. They would have been dealt with in accordance with the regular council rules. I can't imagine that we'll have an issue, a report, or a debate where a councillor has already spoken twice and has something to add to the debate, where we won't allow that to happen. But I think we need focus, and I think we can do our job in committee with these rules as well as we do them now. So that's really the direction of my thoughts.
Are there any further comments or questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. And I don't necessarily disagree with answers of some of the comments made. I think sometimes we could be more focused and more deliberate in some of our questions and things. And I understand that, but we all don't have the same, how do you say, ability in that regard sometimes. Particularly if we're very passionate about a particular issue that's before us, we may be much more involved in something, particularly if it's happening in your ward. You want to be able to speak more about it. And I would guess that perhaps council would allow, if a councillor asked for leave to speak a third time. So I don't necessarily disagree with that, but again, if you're going to give them leave to speak a third time, why do we need this motion? Like, why do we need to change things? Again, and the only thing I would request, and I think Mayor, your motion's going to pass. So I would just wonder if that we could somehow put a timeline on it to say, okay, we would revisit this, let's say in a year, to see how it's worked. Just an opportunity. I know it wasn't that long ago, we thought, some members of council thought it was a wonderful idea for us to leave the room if we were in a conflict of interest position, but it did create some issues, and we did relook at that and we changed our mind on that. And I know that anyone can bring it forward if they're in the affirmative too. But if we put a timeline on this and say, okay, has it really changed the spirit of council and committee, or the need for debate, that we can then look at it again in a particular time frame to readdress that. I could be in support of the motion if there was some re-looking at it, like some review down the road a little bit. That's all.
So Councillor Noyes, are you saying that you would like to make a friendly amendment that we give this a test drive and see how it works? And say give it a period of 6 months to see if that would, if this helps us move along or not? If the mayor is willing to do that?
Yeah.
Your
So
worship?
Chair, I'd be willing, I know that Councillor Zanko was the seconder. I'd be willing to amend the motion to include the provision that the motion be the decision be reviewed in 1 year, so that next September we would have had a year to see how it worked, and if it's working out well, then we can continue on, and if not, well, there's an opportunity to revisit it. So I'd be willing to do that. If Councillor Zanko is agreeable, it's a friendly amendment. If not,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, so then that's a friendly amendment. So if everyone has that, the second that would be that the decision be reviewed in 1 year.
Okay, thank you. So are there any comments or questions to the amendment?
It's part of the motion now, Chair. It's a
Okay.
friendly amendment.
Okay, your worship. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Thank you. I have the chair back to you, your worship.
You announced that carried?
Yes, the chair.
Okay. That takes us then to the next motion, Councillor Zanko.
Yes, thank you, your worship. Moved by myself, seconded by, I need a seconder, Councillor Dubanow. Sorry, I seen his hand first. With regard to the traffic impact study at 745 Crescent Road, that council directs that in the event the apartment building application is received for 745 Crescent Road, which includes an apartment building, a traffic impact study shall be requested at the time of site plan stage. And that's what it reads.
So any questions or comments? Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Lubberts.
Supporting this motion, I think it does reflect what the residents' concerns were. I'm not sure whether the traffic impact study is going to reveal any negative effects of this building going in, but I think the fact that the residents feel so strongly that it's important for us to follow through with that and let them know that we're listening to them.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I'm just wondering if it should, we have the traffic study done at site plan stage, or should it be done before the site plan agreement is approved or signed or agreed upon?
Well,
It's the
that would
same
be
thing as what we're doing here with this.
Right. I presume that would be
Road.
part of this. I think it would be part of the site plan process, and that's what was intended. But Ms. Dolch, is this proper wording for your purposes if a traffic study is necessary?
Through you to the councillor, I think this is the most appropriate stage because we've already gone through the rezoning process. The next stage would be the site plan, and then after that, the building permit process. So because the use is current, the apartment is now a permitted use, I would suggest that it be at the site plan stage.
And so obviously the site plan wouldn't be completed until there was a traffic study done.
That's correct. And we would be looking to make sure that there was no negative impacts on those traffic impacts.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts?
That's fine, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? If none, all those in favor of the motion? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor McDermott, I have a conflict with respect to the next motion by Councillor Noyes. Could I hand the chair to you?
I believe the acting mayor is Councillor Dubanow.
Councillor
Sure.
Dubanow?
Doesn't matter. I can handle it.
Doesn't
Well-
matter to me.
Okay. I'll do that then.
I'm good either way. Both of you are more than adept at managing this. But you've been on a roll tonight, Councillor McDermott, so I thought I would.
Yeah.
Back to
Okay,
you.
thank you, Worship. So, Councillor Noyes, it's up to you.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Regarding the site plan or site plan agreement approval for the proposed cannabis operation at 1141 Ridge Road North. Whereas following the approval of report number CDS-31-13, bylaw 36-13 was passed to delegate approval of the site plans and the signing of the site plan agreements to the Director of Community and Development Services, now Director Planning and Development Services. And whereas bylaw number 36-13 further provides that council may require site plan and or site plan agreements be approved by council prior to the execution by the director or designate. Therefore, be it resolved that council directs that council shall be the approval authority in the site plan and or site plan agreement for the proposed cannabis operation at 1141 Ridge Road North prior to the execution by the Director of Planning and Development Services or designate. That was moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Lubberts, and probably should have started with that. And I did want to speak to that issue if I may.
Continue, Councillor Noyes.
This is a situation where when something happens in your ward and you're there to represent the people's concerns, that you feel it necessary, particularly if it's a site plan comes forward, whether it's cannabis or anything else, that's somewhat outside the norm of that neighborhood. And in this case, I don't think anybody would disagree that's somewhat outside the norm for this neighborhood. I had a discussion with Mrs. Dolt earlier today, and I do understand that we are really limited what staff can do and what council can do in regards to site plans. Or it's very legislative, very specific in the rules and regulations what they can and can't do, particularly if they're not asking for a variance or a zoning change. And in this case, they're not asking for a variance or a zoning change. So we are limited at what we can demand on a site plan. And I do understand that. And it's not that I don't trust staff to follow the regulations, but in this case, I think that the people who are concerned need to feel that they have a voice, that we can put forth, that they can come forward and talk about this specific plan that's happening, in their backyard. I do know that there's been many site plans. To be perfectly honest, I can't think of one that has not come before council, been able to convince the developer, the owner of the property, to concede something or to give a little bit, even though he didn't have to make a change here or make a change there, to address the concerns expressed by the residents. And I think that's the whole purpose of my motion here, is that if the site plan does come forward, that we can hopefully get some consensus from the applicant to address some of the concerns expressed by the public. But if we don't have that, then we don't. This I understand. This particular development didn't even need a public meeting. We had a cannabis thing in this particular area. They came forward, but there was no need for a public meeting in this case either. I guess, and the other thing too, and I know I don't feel this way, but I know that because we have one councillor that's an investor in this property and another one, and our mayor declaring a conflict, I think we really have to make sure that the public looks at this as being clear and transparent. And I think if it comes before council, again, we're limited to what we can do. I understand that, but at least to give the residents an opportunity to know that their concerns were heard, and hopefully the developer will maybe make some changes to address that. And that's that's the reason for my motion. And I think that's the reason that in 2000, I guess it was 2013, that they added that, when they added that the site plans should be approved by the Director of Planning and Development Services, that if a councillor had a development in their ward that they did want some input into, it would come before council. I think that's why that particular bylaw is in there in the first place. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Anybody? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several questions. The first one, though, I contacted the clerk about this because I was concerned whether this would be considered in order because of the previous motion that was really raised to bring all cannabis site plans to council for approval. And with my discussions with the clerk, I was advised that this is in order. And I'm just wondering if anyone had a similar concern that I had. I'm just wondering if the clerk could perhaps explain that, just to get that on the record and explain the difference between the previous motion and this one that we're discussing tonight right now, through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Ms. Schofield?
Through you, Chair. Yes, we did have a conversation, and at the time that Councillor Noyes brought forward her next motion, we did get an opinion from our town solicitor, and he advised us that they were two separate matters. One, the first motion was aimed towards a broad group, and that was defeated. The second one is site-specific, and in fact, in a few months' time, another Councillor Noyes could even ask for another one to come forward. The other thing too is that the bylaw specifically delegates the authority for the director and specifically provides the council that they may require any site plan. So that was just added as well to support that motion coming forward.
Thank you, Ms. Schofield. Back to you, Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Madam Clerk, for that. It certainly set my mind at ease for that, and I just wanted to get it out there publicly in case anyone else was wondering the same thing. But I do have just a couple questions, Mr. Chair, with regard to this particular facility. I believe last time Mr. Claroni, the proponent of this, appeared before council, he had mentioned that instead of being an outdoor facility, which was originally proposed, he said that this was now going to be an indoor facility. And I'm just wondering if through you, if Ms. Dolch or another member of staff can confirm if that's the direction the site plan is kind of moving right now.
Ms. Dolch?
Through to the councillor, yes, that's correct. Right now, there's a note on the plan that outdoor cultivation of cannabis or hemp is neither proposed nor permitted on the subject property. So they are restricting to indoor use.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you. And just, I guess, one other quick question then. So we already have two facilities that I'm aware of that are indoor facilities operating in Fort Erie. We have Canacure on Jarvis Street, which is likewise located in a residential area. And we also have Stevens Green, which is located more in a rural area out in Stevensville. And I recall from our discussion when this originally came up, must be about a year now, maybe not quite, that Ms. Dolch's predecessor, Mr. Brady, had mentioned a discussion about complaints related to these indoor facilities. And I'm just wondering through you, if Ms. Dolch can confirm if there are any complaints on file related to odor or any other nuisances commonly attributed to indoor cannabis operations, particularly with Canacure on Jarvis Street being a residential area, or even Stevens Green in general, if there have been any complaints at all.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor, in terms of the ones that are approved and legal, yes, we've received no complaints that I'm aware of.
Councillor Dubanow?
So, and thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of that, you know, we already have a track record of very knowledgeable staff, Mr. Brady previously and Ms. Dolch now, who have been they've already demonstrated an expertise in the ability to manage these site plans to ensure that there are no nuisances suffered by the neighbors. And in light of this now being registered as part of the site plan to be an indoor facility, which we already have a track record of mitigating and ensuring that there are no complaints because we haven't received any. I will not be supporting it for this particular one tonight, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody that hasn't spoken yet? Councillor Zanko, and then back to you, Councillor Noyes. Councillor Zanko?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate Councillor Noyes's motion, and I understand, you know, this is her ward. I know why you brought this forward, and I can appreciate that. I'm really, you know, I feel the same way that I felt when you brought the original motion forward. We hired a consultant for this reason. Consultants have the expertise, politicians don't. So that really is the only reason why I wouldn't support this. I just, I feel like we do have staff that have been through this. Ms. Dolch is very experienced in this, but we've also, you know, we hired a consultant, and that was a motion that I had brought forward. So I feel like we should leave this to the hands of the experts, but I do appreciate your motion, Councillor Noyes.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, and I do respect your Councillor Zanko and Councillor Dubanow, your comments, but I do want to bring to Councillor Zanko particularly your comment about the consultant. The consultant report is not in. If I felt that the consultant report was in, and again, the consultant report is going to report, part of it is public input about what they'd like to see and what their concerns are. That consultant report is not available. So, you know, we can, again, I do trust that staff know a lot about cannabis, but we don't have the value of that consultant report before this site plan will be approved. I understand from Ms. Dolch, they cannot wait for that particular consultant report on cannabis in regards to the entire town to be able, before the site plan gets approved. If it was, perhaps I wouldn't even be making this motion to move forward. And in regards to Councillor Dubanow, the two examples that you gave are good examples, but the one was an already existing building and was completely paved. And the other one is out in the middle of, I won't say nowhere, but you know, it's not in a residential area. Let's just put it that way. So the concerns would be quite, but I do appreciate that we have two very successful businesses. And in my first motion, I said if any business that was already existing or already had the indoor, that they really wouldn't be part of my motion, you know, a few months ago. However, this particular site has already had two get-togethers discussing it. The residents are concerned, and they just feel that there's no avenue for them to address the value values all individually and things, but they just feel that at least if council has the final word in, and again, we can't make up the rules. We can't change site plan, you know, legislative requirements and rules and regulations. You know, there are rules that the building code and everything else that they have to follow, and I understand that. But for instance, Councillor Dubanow, was one of the concerns that the residents have brought forward to me is the fact that it's gravel. And if you looked at the site plan, it's a fairly long driveway to the back. And it's a good thing that they're putting it at the back because it's further away from the houses. I understand that. But the fact that it's a gravel driveway and a gravel parking lot, they're concerned about the dust and whether there's going to be a fence or something else up like that. That could be decided in a site plan thing. But again, if they don't have an opportunity of expressing their concerns, and those concerns may not be addressed. The other issue in this particular case is where the driveway is located. The driveway is located, at least from the site plan that I saw, I did not have a chance to, Mrs. Dolch did send me another site plan, that the driveway is located, in my opinion, again, I'm only seeing the one in isolation, as far away from the owner's dwelling as possible, which means that it's probably really close to one of the neighbors' homes. And that if they could have flipped that around so the driveway would be put on the other side, closer to the owner's property, their home, like dwelling, as opposed to his neighbor's property, that may be something that they would at least want the owner to consider. Again, we can't force them to pave it, I understand that. We can't force them to move the driveway if it meets code, but again, the whole idea of council looking at the site plan is to at least listen to the concerns and see if there can be some consensus, some give and take on this. And, you know, without it coming to council, there's no opportunity. Again, there's no public meeting for this particular site. And again, we do not have the benefit of the consultant report. We do not know what the recommendations are going to be. And this site plan will be approved before that report comes. So again, I think we should, you know, council should be involved in this site plan agreement. So that's really all I have to say without repeating myself. I'm pontificating.
Okay, then we'll go to Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just looking at the whole thing, and I don't think it's a matter of trying to find a way to prevent this from happening, right? If you look at where we're at and the public has concerns, right? And it's a councillor that's involved in the project. And so, and I'm not taking away anything from staff. I'm not going to take anything away from any consultant, right? Or even the experience of councillors, right? But perception is reality. And you're going to get those people out there and residents out there that say, well, they just gave the councillor whatever the councillor wanted, right? If we're all confident that through site plan, and even with us being involved in the site plan, that everything is going to be all right, then we're going to satisfy perception from the public. And the public is going to be satisfied that we included them. We were open and transparent. It was a councillor that was involved, right? And we allowed them to see the process through. So the perception will not be out there. The rumors won't be out there because they had just as much opportunity to speak their concerns, and it was open to the public and everybody understood what was going on. And as long as everything is going well, like Councillor Dubanow says, we haven't had any problems with Canicure. We haven't had any problems with the indoor facility in Stevensville, right? But for me, it's just that we avoid public perception and any negative thoughts or any negative rumors that might go out there. And this is not going to block the project in any way. It's just going to give the residents of Fort Erie peace of mind. So I'm going to support the motion.
Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't planning on speaking a second time, but some of the comments Councillor Lubberts raised actually are very concerning to me. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act exists for a reason. That's why we declare conflicts when we're involved or have a pecuniary interest. I mean, there's a legal reason for that. And as far as I'm aware, everyone involved in that has done so. And I have no reason to question their integrity. So I'm a little concerned with what's being insinuated there with council colleagues who I have respect for and I know have conducted themselves in a respectful manner. Now, I will say this, if it comes to council, the site plan comes to council, the way I view it, there's more questions then, because we're all colleagues here. We have a rapport with one another. We make decisions. We talk to, during council together. We know each other. By removing it from council and giving it to staff, it becomes an issue of professionals looking at it from a legal perspective without it being brought to politicians. And that is why, particularly if you're concerned about the issue of integrity here, why would you bring it to council? I'm very concerned with that line and what's being insinuated there. I just had to speak out about that, Mr. Chair. I've already said how I feel about this, so that's good enough for me.
Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I don't know where Councillor Dubanow was coming from there. I was only merely saying public perception, right? Perception is reality. I've been a councillor now for 10 years, right? I understand public perception. It was nothing to do with Councillor Butler, right? And conflict of interest. She declared her conflict of interest, and that's where that stands. It's just that we need to make sure we give the public peace of mind so that they can see that we didn't do anything, right, to show favoritism, right? And so if we allow it to be open and transparent so that they can see that everything went by smoothly, right? Because to be honest with you, I'm looking at what's happening here, and now that I see, and Ms. Dolch has verified that this is going to be indoor growing, I'm looking and I'm saying there's probably no way that this will stop happening, because I know I've done my research, I've done my due diligence, and as long as you're growing indoors, right? I have some people that are growing indoors, and the filtration system that they have today, 0.009% odor comes out of the building. So, and that's, I think, was the biggest concern of the residents. There are some other concerns about the parking lot and why do they have so many parking spaces and stuff. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they can speak on it and they can see it for themselves how it's going to be, right? But I'm just trying to avoid that public perception, right? That's not my perception. And I'm sure that other councillors see it that way. I don't know what Councillor Dubanow was trying to think that I was insinuating, but I'm not insinuating anything, Mr. Chair. I'm just stating this is what's happened in my experience, right? Perception is reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more? Okay. Councillor Zanko?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Dolch. Where are we with the cannabis consultant and the study that we've, I know last time I checked, I believe you put that out for tender, but I just don't know where we are at now with that.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor. Oh, sorry, I'm getting some feedback. We have issued the tender. We do have a consultant on board. We've had about 2 weeks ago, we had our first kickoff meeting. So they are starting that work now with hopes to complete it by early next year.
And just further to that, if there was any additional concerns that you have that are outside of your expertise, would you not be able to go to that consultant at this point?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor, the consultant's looking at a policy review and legal review at this point, but if there was concerns beyond our expertise, such as odor or anything like that, we do have a consultant on file who reviews the odor. They're an odor consultant that will review the site plan to ensure that they're satisfied, because us on staff, we don't have the ability or the expertise on odor to do that work.
Okay, so just so I understand that through your chair, so that consultant has already been hired for this site plan?
Sorry,
or if needed?
Through you to the councillor. The consultant that we use for our odor consulting, not necessarily for the policy or legal review, which is part of the RFP. It's a separate consultant contract we've done, and it's a small contract. And what that does is if somebody proposes an odor facility or an odor control measure that we're unfamiliar with. So it's hard to explain, but the Pharmetics, the Canacare, that facility is a building within a building concept for odor. And we know that works because we have 2 examples right now. There are people that propose different measures to control odor. Some are deodorization machines. We're not familiar on how successful those are. So we have engaged an odor consultant just to review site plans on our behalf, just to provide us some advice on whether or not those would work. In the interim, until we have the review done with this new consultant providing us some clear direction.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you for letting me speak the third time in a council meeting. Anyway, again, the timing is off, and that's the problem. We had the benefit of the consultant report. We could then, the residents would, I would feel somewhat more comfortable because they had input into the consultant reports and through the public meeting process. Again, this is a site plan that has no requirements for public input. I have no doubt in my mind that the public who have concerns can call Ms. Dolch, and they will do their best to listen and everything else. But that's like one person here and one person there type thing. It's not it doesn't feel like they really have an equal opportunity. And you don't know what you don't know. And most of these people don't even know the building it's a building, and it's going to be indoors, and it's going to be a prefab, and it's going to have double walls. So not only does the site plan give an opportunity for the residents to ask questions, it gives us an opportunity of educating those who have concerns that, yes, this building is going to be, well, I understand it's going to be a prefab, and Ms. Dolch can correct me, and I would imagine it's going to be a double walled, and it's going to have A, B, and C in place to mitigate some of their concerns. So having it come to council also gives us the opportunity of describing the project to the residents around it. I'm not trying to be kind of like finding an excuse to stop it. That's not my rationale at all. But and a simple thing, for instance, I was talking to Ms. Dolch, I was looking at the site plan myself today, and I was looking at an older one, so there might be a newer one. For instance, the handicap parking. I mean, these are little things, but these are the things that the public picks up on. The handicap parking is besides the garbage bins. I don't think that's a good place for the garbage bins or the handicap parking. And that would be something that the site plan would say, okay, the public would say, I don't think that's where that's where the garbage should be put beside the accessible parking spots. Little things like that can come out that we may not see. It probably won't be captured in the consultant report. The same thing, this particular development, unlike the other two that Councillor Dubanow has, is going to require water to be trucked in. I don't know how many trucks a day are going to come. I've heard everywhere from 3 a week to 10 a day. I don't know. And if you're putting trucks on a gravel road and you have a house that's within 10 feet of that gravel road, would you want to be there? So if it's paved, or if they have to put, let's say, some other mitigating oil or whatever just to lower the dust, that would come through in a site plan discussion, and hopefully there'd be some consensus. So again, it's just to give the public an opportunity to discuss. Just earlier today, we talked about passing a traffic study for a possible development of an apartment building. Now, I don't think that's a requirement of the site plan, but again, we heard the people talk, and there was a public meeting because the zoning was changing. But we heard what they said. That was a concern of theirs, and through the site plan agreement and through the public meetings, we're looking at having the traffic study to address that concern. So anyway, I just hope that the public has an opportunity for the site plan coming to council, and they have an opportunity to voice any more concerns that they may have. That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any more comments or questions? Before I call the question, just want to ask the clerk, can I comment on this now, or is there a rule against that?
No, you can comment on it as long as you're not going to go down the path of possibly an amendment.
I would not, no. Okay, so the reason I just want to talk about this a bit is I won't be supporting Councillor Noyes' motion. And there's some good reasons why. I think the zoning, in this case, is appropriate for this indoor cannabis grow. I think that over the past little while, we've had 2 meetings where clearly individuals that live in the Ridgeroy area there have had ample opportunity to share with council their complaints about having a grow up in that area. And I believe that Ms. Dolce, in her due diligence of taking care of these public meetings, could probably tell us exactly how many showed up at both of the occasions when they had the opportunity to speak. And I think during our council meetings, we had allowed a great deal of latitude to personalize what wasn't necessarily a Ridge Road issue, but kind of an overall look at things. So to me, I believe in Health Canada and how they're going about grow us, because it's proven that the ones that we do have seem to work. And I have all the confidence in the world in the planning department because I know they heard the residents just like all of us did at those meetings. So I don't believe the public's been left out of the loop. You know, sometimes councillors don't agree with the public and the public don't agree with councillors. But when they have been, I don't believe it's not been an open and transparent thing, because they have had the opportunity on 2 occasions to come to council and personalize their statements at those meetings. So are we aware of the complaints and the needs of the residents? We certainly are. I think we heard them loud and clear, and anybody that didn't wasn't attending the meetings. So I will be not voting for this based on that, and with the confidence that Ms. Dolce and her team will make sure that very important health and safety issues, traffic issues with regards to anything that goes around in their area is considered and hopefully mitigated. And I believe the developer will probably, you know, he seemed the night that he was there, seemed that he was happy to entertain any other ideas that might come forward. And so I'm going to call the vote now. All in favor of Councillor Noyes' motion? Opposed, if any? Carried.
Carried.
Okay.
I'm sorry, defeated. Sorry.
It's lost.
Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. Did a great job till the end there. It was kind of like the Academy Awards.
Yeah, well, it's been a long night.
Yes. We have a couple of more motions to be dealt with. Councillor Dubanow, you have the next motion on the agenda.
I do, Your Worship. Councillor Zanko, would you be amicable to seconding this as well? Okay, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko. Whereas complaints have been made to the town and from residents on 10th Street regarding drainage, and whereas following investigation by town staff, drainage in the existing ditches was found to be deficient, and whereas ditches were restored to original depths, but due to utility conflicts, side slopes were cut steeper than desirable by residents who have expressed concerns related to the safety and maintenance of their properties. Now therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to inspect the ditches in their current state and prepare a report with recommendations for council to consider actions going forward, and further that council directs that the allocation of funds for any costs associated with the recommendations will be considered through the 2021 capital budget deliberations. And Your Worship, I'm wondering if I'd have the opportunity to speak to that.
Of course.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an interesting situation. For anyone who is not familiar with 10th Street, it's actually located to the east of where Walmart is. You would actually pull in on Sims at the traffic lights, and instead of turning left to go to Walmart and No Frills and the LCBO, you would turn right and you end up in a little subdivision there. And if you hang the next left, it's 10th Street. And it's kind of a unique area because it was constructed in the 1990s, but the cross section and design of the subdivision is older. It's similar to what you'd see for something constructed in the 50s or 60s. And due to the location of utilities and the fact that they, rather than having storm sewers, they have ditches, to resolve the drainage related issues, they had to cut ditches there very, very steep. And it's an unfortunate situation of needing to resolve one issue, which then created another. And it's been an issue that has been brought to me repeatedly by nearly every resident on that street. I'm hoping we can get this looked at, take a look at costs, perhaps, look at local improvement fees. There's lots of different things we can do here. It's not a financial ask tonight, but I'm hoping that we can at least consider something for them and bring it forward. And I want to extend my appreciation to Mr. Walsh and the staff in the infrastructure department. Mr. Walsh in particular has been, he's heard from me many times. I have no doubt he's heard from many residents as well. And I want to extend the appreciation of the discussions that we've had about this, the way to move forward, the way to rectify it. And I'm hoping council will support this at least so that we can get that report and then consider options there going forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. This is a matter that's been going on for a number of years. I've had meetings with residents at Town Hall during the last term and also met residents on site, so I'm familiar with the ongoing problems. Any other councillors wish to speak to this? Councillor Noyes. You're on mute. You have to unmute.
Just did that. We must have been on.
There you go.
I do understand the need for this to go forward. I am concerned about the cost. However, this is not the only ditch that needs attention in town. I know that there's many ditches that need attention, and I'm not sure whether one should take priority over the other. I will say that I can remember when I was on council a while ago that I made the comment that on Helena Street, the ditches were so deep you could probably put your kayak in it and go. That's how deep the ditch on Helena Street was, and there was no shoulder whatsoever. And if you should lose control of your car and you should hit one of those, you should go in the ditch and hit it, it could be some major damage and perhaps injury. So I'm familiar with some of the deep ditches. I'll have to go by the Sims Avenue area and look. But it's not just unique to that area. I know that where you don't have storm sewers and you have open ditches, like I have one in front of a lot next to me, so I won't say it's a conflict because that's not what I'm talking about, but it's an open ditch, and I know how hard it is for my husband. I know I brought this up with the director before, and it's like a 4-hour job for him to get his the whippersnipper out and cut down all the weeds, and he's doing it. It's town property, and he's doing it because it makes the property look nice. I don't know how many years he's going to be able to do it because the ditch itself is about 4 feet deep and probably about 6 feet across. Again, to get the drainage that's required. So I can really feel for the residents in this area also. And I don't know whether, I know that we being the large we don't like culverts and covered ditches and things like that. But at the same time, so we want the deep ditches, which are hard to maintain, which the town could not possibly maintain the open ditches if the residents that were rebutting it didn't take care of it. We have one here on Ott Road, right on the corner of West Main and Ott, and they're both open ditches, and neither one of them, they have trees growing in, cattails, and we're talking about off of Main Street here. So I am in support of this, but I'm hoping that the drainage report is also perhaps going to address some of this in regards to the ditching. I don't know if it will or if that's beyond the scope of that report. Maybe Mr. Walsh can comment on it.
You're talking about the report that's the subject of this motion?
Well,
or the report that he's doing with respect to drainage and how that would affect the residential ditches?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
I think they go hand in hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received a draft today of our ditching master plan. It only addresses ditches in rural areas. It doesn't address our urban system.
Councillor Noyes?
I guess my other question then would be, do we have any idea of what other areas that are residential that may have the same problem as the one that's currently before us? Like, how big is this problem? Because if we fix it here, we're probably gonna have to fix it other places. So I'd like to see the scope of the issue.
Before you vote on this motion or before you deal with the recommendations coming out of this report, if the motion passes?
again, I'm happy to support the motion as it is, because I think the information will have to come, but and this is just for consideration again, and in regards to, we were looking at budget time too. We would probably have an idea what the cost would be, but.
So I
will
think
be
that's a
able-
reasonable, I think your concern is a reasonable aspect for staff to address in doing the report that is requested in this motion. In other words, what's the context?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Councillor Dubanow, do you have your hand up? I'm going to go to Councillor Lubberts next.
I did, Your Worship, because I just wanted to, if I have the floor, Your Worship, you weren't going to.
Councillor Lubberts does.
Apologies.
Councillor Lubberts.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Interesting motion to bring forward. I understand exactly what the concerns are. And I just want to back up a few years, particularly election year, this past election. There was some concerns about the ditches on Dover Court as well. And Mayor Redekop, you'll remember that meeting, and we spoke with our Director of Infrastructure. We were supposed to get a report back from Infrastructure about a plan to address those ditches. And I'm going to support this motion, and they're going to bring forward a plan, but I'm expecting now that we will get the plan for Dover Court as well, because that never happened, and Dover Court has never been addressed. And so here we are, you know, working on these, and I believe when Councillor Stephen Passero was our councillor in Fort Erie, he brought some ditches up in the north end, that there was a problem with the depth of those ditches. Don't know if they were addressed or not, but, you know, if we're going to go back and address the ditches, then I think we need to address the other ditches that were complained about as well. But I'll support this motion.
Councillor Lubberts, my recollection of Dover Court was that the drainage was supposed to be dealt with. I don't recall a report, but I'm going to ask the clerk to maybe look into that.
Well, I don't think the report.
I will ask, excuse me, I will ask Mr. Walsh, is there work still to be done at Dover Court?
Yes, there is. With the plans are finished again. It's another COVID/staffing issue. We're short of PM engineering right now, but we are ready to issue a quote on that. Essentially, it's to still have roadside ditches, but not nearly as deep or steep as they are as this on Dover Court.
Okay, so Councillor Lubberts, that's going to be dealt with. That was my recollection. So Madam Clerk, you don't need to look up anything. In terms of the north.
Will that be done?
Do you know when, Mr. Walsh?
Get it done this. Sorry, we're hoping to get it done this fall.
Okay. Thank you.
In terms of, as far as the north end is concerned, there can't be very many streets that don't have curbs and gutters in the north end. So I'm not sure what streets you may have been referring to. Councillor Dubanow, you wanted to address a comment made by Councillor Noyes.
Yes, Your Worship, and Councillor Lubberts kind of alluded to it as well. The 10th Street is unique, and let me backtrack a little. I acknowledge that there are a lot of streets in Fort Erie and in this municipality that have ditches. Typically, that was the way older areas were designed for drainage. Rather than putting the infrastructure underground, you just let the water travel above ground to wherever it needs to go. I mean, areas of Crescent Park, there's areas of Ward 2 even that do have ditches. There is a uniqueness to this street, and I kind of touched on it earlier, was that this was constructed in the 1990s. Now, I don't think, and perhaps there were unique things, this is going back in the early 1990s, I would have been a child, but I don't know why we would approve a subdivision in the 1990s that had a 1960s cross section, because even if you go and look at Garrison Village, which is also located in Ward 2, that was approved in the early 80s into the mid 1980s. Storm sewers, curbs. It's a modern looking subdivision. So there is a uniqueness to the street here. I don't know why it was approved the way it is. That's questions for individuals who are no longer here with us, but there is a uniqueness to it with the age of that neighborhood and the way it was constructed that caused this to happen. And that's why I'm addressing this specifically from that context and hoping that we can sort this out for them, because these houses are 15 years old and they're dealing with issues that you would typically find, sorry, not 15 years old, we're going more 25 years, sorry. These are issues that you're typically dealing with, 50, 60, 70-year-old houses and neighborhoods. So I appreciate where Councillor Noyes and Councillor Lubberts are coming from. There are a lot of other ditches in Ward 2. Alfred. There's some Mather Boulevard type area that we've run into similar issues, but it's the uniqueness of the age of this area and why it was constructed this way that has perplexed a lot of the neighborhood, and it's even perplexed me as well. So I just wanted to touch on that, just to mention that there is a slightly unique aspect to this. So that's why I just wanted to mention.
Any other comments or questions before I call the vote? All those in favor of the motion? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to Councillor Noyes. You have the next resolution. Next motion.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Lubberts. Well, got the wrong one. That saying moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Lubberts regarding Community Gaming Development Corporation review. Whereas since the inception of e-gaming, the Ontario Lottery Corporation, the OLG, together with the Ontario Charitable Gaming Association, the OCGA, have made changes to the charitable bingo and gaming policies and standards for charities, which may not be reflective or referred to in the Town of Fort Erie's current gaming policy bylaw number 25-2015, and therefore a review/update of the town's gaming policy is necessary. And whereas in discussion with the town's gaming staff, the Community Gaming Development Corporation, the CGDC, has also recognized that due to the OLG and OCGA changes, a review of the town's gaming policy is required. Now therefore be it resolved that the council direct staff and the CGDC to review the changes in the gaming policies and standards for charities and make recommendations to council for revising the Town of Fort Erie's gaming policy to address and reflect those changes and make further recommendations that may improve and or update the policy. If I can speak to that.
Yes, please proceed.
I think the resolution pretty much speaks for itself. There has been, I may not be correct, but at least 3 revisions or revitalization reports that change the nature of the structure of bingo from what we remembered, let's say 15 years ago, even 10 years ago. There are different levels of organization now that have to report, that we have to report to, that they have to, that there's some synergy between the different levels. And it's not, our town policy is really outdated. It does not meet the current changes. It doesn't even address it. So it's just, I think it's necessary that we look at it. It's been since the 15th, I think, in 2015, I think it was just housekeeping. I think changes that were made, I think they changed the name licensing to permits. But other than that, it was really not looked at in any detail. But I think it would, I think it's a policy that needs to be looked at, particularly with the changes that have come down.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I do appreciate Councillor Noyes bringing this up. I think it is actually an important review. I just wanted to mention, I'm not sure if Councillor Noyes was aware, but this was actually something that the Gaming Corporation through the board had actually embarked upon almost a year ago. I think it was back last October, to review the bylaw with staff and then present changes to council for approval. It's something that we're looking at. There's already a 4-member steering committee that has been formed to do this. Because of COVID and everything else, the process has just been delayed, as many other things are. So I appreciate Councillor Noyes bringing this up. It is something that the Gaming board and the corporation is aware of, and that it does need to be updated. I support this motion in principle, but I have concerns related to the wording, and perhaps through you, your worship, through Councillor Noyes, I can get some clarification, because it mentions here directing staff and the CGDC to review the gaming policies and standards for charities. Now, I'm a little concerned here. Are we requesting the gaming policy bylaw? Because if that's the case, I think it should say that specifically. Or are we looking at a much broader whole sort of review of everything? Because I read the preamble and I see it as the bylaw, which I agree with. It's something the gaming board is embarking upon already, and this is appreciated from Councillor Noyes. But the wording in that portion is not that specific. So I'm just wondering if is that the intent? Could it perhaps be amended to reflect that? And the other point as well that I'm concerned about, and I don't know if it really makes any difference as far as the motion is concerned. I know council has the ability to direct staff, but the CGGC is a separate corporation. I'm not sure we have the ability to make direction to them. We can make a request, I would think. If you want to leave it as direct, I'm not sure it would make much of a difference, but I'm just pointing that out for the sake of completeness. And I'm just wondering what Councillor Noyes may think of those issues there. Thank you, Your Worship.
We'll get to Councillor Noyes in a moment. The staff of the CGDC is the staff of the municipality, and the CGDC is declared to be an employee of the municipality. So I think that there can be a direction. I think that part of the motion is appropriate. In terms of what Councillor Noyes is driving for, she's heard your question, perhaps she can articulate.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. To Councillor Dubanow, I'm not sure exactly what your concern is, but I can tell you perhaps where I'm coming from is that there's been a lot of changes. And so if we're going to make the changes based on legislative changes that we have to make and incorporate in our town policy, it would be prudent for us then to look at the town policy. And since council sets policy, it would be prudent for us to look at it. Because I think as we're going through the changes, I think you're going to find that parts of our policy no longer fit. And I'm not going to do I haven't done a deep dive into it yet. And but from reviewing the two documents, there's a lot of things in our policy, the town policy, that kind of, I would say, it just doesn't match what the legislation, what the gaming legislation is. So my purpose is basically to look at the town policy. I don't know, we have no way of looking into like the gaming corporation. That's not within our purview. I understand that. So we're not going to, my purpose is not to dictate to the gaming, whatever your bylaw number 1 is or whatever, that's not part of this. You may find that as we go through the town policy, that your bylaw may be somewhat out of date also. And you then, as your corporation, may decide that it needs to be looked at also. I don't know, but I'm gearing this strictly to the changes that have occurred on a provincial level, that have changed the how we go about doing the what's it called, the administrative functions, I think, of this and moving forward. I don't know if that answers your question.
Councillor Dubanow?
No, it actually, it does put it into a lot more perspective, Your Worship, but I'm just wondering through you, perhaps Mr. Jansen might be able to clarify this, because the position of the gaming corporation is that they are not an employee of the town. And there was a bit of back and forth as to, it says that, but then I believe there was a legal opinion taken. And I'm just wondering if Mr. Jansen or maybe another member of staff might be able to get some clarification on that, because it seems to get bounced around quite often. And the opinion of the gaming board is that it is not the case. So I'm just wondering if perhaps Mr. Jansen might be able to give some clarity to that.
Mr. Dubanow, I'm going to answer that question because I happened to be the mayor at the time the Gaming Corporation was established. One of the issues for the Alcohol and Gaming Commission was they weren't really too anxious to have the council delegate the authority that it did ultimately to the Gaming Corporation. So my recollection is that in order to appease the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, the Gaming Corporation had to be described as an employee rather than an arm's length corporation, which the government would not permit. They wouldn't permit the municipality to devolve or to transfer its responsibility for gaming licensing to an arm's length body. So it's described as an employee, and unless the CAO has additional information on that, no. Mr. Jansen, do you?
No, I don't have the background on that. We do have Grace that's available here as well to answer questions. She may have some more background, but I think the way you described it is, from my experience, fairly accurate, but we could always come back and address that.
It may be that, and perhaps it should be addressed if this motion were to pass, and it may be, Councillor Dubanow, that the rules and the view of the provincial licensing bodies has changed, so that perhaps could be part of the review of the policies that's being looked at. You still have the floor.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm just for clarification, I see Miss Gress, she jumped in here. I'm just wondering, I believe she has the background on the disagreement here as to why a disagreement as to whether the Gaming Corporation is an employee of the town. And I'm just wondering if perhaps through you, Your Worship, if she can provide the Gaming Corporation's perspective of this.
I think we understand the Gaming Corporation's perspective.
Do we?
Well, when they tell the mayor that they're not going to provide him information, I think that gives an indication that their view is that they're not responsive to the municipality.
We did invite you to speak, and as far as I'm aware, you didn't come answer our questions. So, I mean,
that's not going to be happening anytime soon, I don't think. So, anyways, let's move on. Does anyone else wish to address council on this? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I understand where Councillor Dubanow has a few concerns, but I'm looking at the motion here, and it says referred to in the town of Fort Erie's gaming policy bylaw number 25-2015. So the gaming policy, in my view, is a bylaw for the town of Fort Erie. And if I'm correct, that's what Councillor Noyes is asking to be reviewed and to be updated. So it's our bylaw that needs to be updated, and we need the Gaming Corporation to be included to work with staff to make the changes so that the town's bylaw is updated accordingly. And I'm also wondering is at each gaming or bingo hall, right, that we have here in the town, it's my understanding that they have their own gaming, the lottery or nonprofit association, and they have a president from each hall. And I know one is Jean Cardilli, and I'm just wondering if the people from each gaming hall, from OLG or AGCO or wherever they're from, if they might want to be included in some of the discussions to make sure that we're updated and that everything complies with AGCO or OLG, because Mayor Redekop, as you mentioned, when you first put this together with gaming back in the day, it was those organizations that said, no, there's certain things you can't do. And we had to change the town's bylaw to accommodate the gaming industry in Ontario. So I don't know if it would be a friendly amendment to include them, but I'm wondering if Councillor Noyes would look at that and consider including them as well in the discussions.
Councillor Noyes.
I think I know where Councillor Lubberts is going, is that they are a player in this, because it is a level now that's introduced in regards to what administrative functions they have, which obviously is going to reflect on the administrative functions that the community gaming does, because there's in some places an overlap in different areas, so it wouldn't hurt to have it in. I don't know if we can. I have no problem with requesting their input, but I don't think we can direct them to be involved. But I have no doubt in my mind that as we're going through this process, they will be part of the discussion, whether formally or informally, because I don't think you can proceed with it without having some dialogue with that level. Because it's the Community Charity Hall Association, if I got that right, Grace, that now plays a much more important role than they had in the past. And again, with the new rules, it's like a site plan. You can do this, but you can't do that. The rules are pretty specific and they're pretty well spelled out there. So I have no problem saying that, that the Community Gaming Hall Association or Charity Hall Association, whatever that acronym is, be involved, because I think they have to be. But again, I think that would just be part of the review anyway. So I don't know if we actually have to put it in there or if it's just going to be part of the review, because I don't know how you can do it without it. I don't know if Ms. Grace wants to comment on that in regards to that level being involved in the in the motion, so to speak.
So, Mr. Kress, have you had an opportunity to contemplate the motion and what steps you might take if this were passed? You have to unmute yourself.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Sure. Have you contemplated what steps you would take in order to fulfill the direction in the motion if it's passed? In other words, would that include some outside consultation?
Personally, I don't think that would be a good idea.
I agree, by the way.
I'm sorry?
I agree, by the way.
The policy is council's policy. The Hall Charities Association has their own policies and standards that they have to follow. And we support them, and we have a working relationship with both organizations. To have them have a say in how council is going to allocate or penalize, personally, I don't think that's a good idea.
Councillor Noyes.
I think I am on. Again, I think I know it's hard because we haven't done the deep dive into this yet in regards to all the changes in the policies, but there is, okay, looking at it briefly, there's like a flow chart. Okay, the municipality does A, and it's spelled out. This is our role. The charity hall associations does B, and it's spelled out. They do A, B, C, D, and E. And then there's the owners, the hall owners. They're responsible for A, B, and C, and D. So you have to have everyone has to have a clear idea of what their role is. And a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of what's happening now, you're still kind of into, well, we've done it like this in the past, and they haven't made the changes as not just from our level, but from the Cherry Hall associations, haven't necessarily followed all the regulations in that either. It's all being done. Don't get me wrong. It's all being done.
Councillor Noyes, let me interrupt you because Councillor Lubberts actually has the floor.
Oh, okay.
He asked a question, you responded, you asked Ms. Gress to get involved, she's responded. You had a chance to respond to what she says. Councillor Lubberts, you have the floor.
Yeah, no, Mayor Redekop, I just needed to know that all parties that needed to be included were included. If Ms. Gress feels that this can be handled through the Gaming Corporation in the town of Fort Erie, then I'm fine with that. We'll just proceed. I just didn't want us to make things in our policy that conflicted with what the province has. So, but if we can move forward with that, I'm fine with just going with the Gaming Corporation and our staff, and we'll tweak and update our policy accordingly.
Anyone else wish to address the issue? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. That then takes us, Councillor Butler, you've got a motion that's going to be postponed, but I believe you need to put it on the floor. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? No.
I'd like
The designate the
No.
sheer reference in the agenda to it being postponed is adequate.
It was just to give everyone notice that was her intention. She doesn't have the motion ready.
And I'd like
Um,
to
Beg your pardon?
would like to speak to the reason why I'm postponing it.
If it's being postponed, you can't really.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I wish I would have known that because I wouldn't have put it on the floor that way then.
I'm going to give you some latitude to tell us why. I'm curious, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that, Your Worship. The reason that I decided to postpone that is because I had a conversation with Mr. Chidoba, or
Chidoba.
With respect to his report, and I wanted to make sure that everything was timed properly. I also wanted to give consideration to the SPCA to take a chance and get those policies and directives in place so that they would have something to show us, because I do not believe, and it was confirmed earlier, that they were not in place and that they are using my letter with those policies that I mentioned as a checklist to ensure that those health and safety policies are being delivered. And so everybody was missing them, and now they're getting them up to date, which I feel vindicated about and very happy at the fact that they're using my letter as a checklist to move forward. So amen and thank you.
Okay, so that takes us to notices of motion. Councillor Dubanow, I know you have a motion that you want to put on the floor for the future.
Yes, actually, Your Worship, I actually have two. The first one is notice of motion regarding the pedestrian pathway leading from Nancy Street to the stormwater management pond and the need to reopen that. That's returnable at the earlier of either the next regular council meeting or a special council meeting. And the next motion is regarding the need for the federal government to put policies in place to permit family reunification and compassionate travel between Canada and foreign countries, and that's returnable at the next regular council meeting.
Thank you. Are there any other notices of motion? I also have a notice with respect to a motion regarding retirement homes, the provincial monitoring of them, and the nature of health services available in them. I've got the wording, it's rather lengthy, so that will be brought forward at the next regular or special council meeting, whichever is first. If there are no other notices of motion, then that takes us to the consideration of bylaws. Are there any bylaws that anyone wishes removed from the package? If not, Councillor McDermott, you have the resolution for first and second reading of the bylaw package. And do you have a seconder? That would be resolution number 9.
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaw number 92-2020 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Oh, I've got you doing first and second reading.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got third reading.
You've got number 10. I've got Councillor Butler with number 10. So let's do this. Whoever's got first and second reading for the bylaw package, resolution number 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, Your Worship. That is me.
Okay.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that the bylaw package containing 92-2020 to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90 as amended, removal of holding provision, South Coast Village Phase 3 condominium, Mars Homes, Crystal Beach Incorporated, Dan Gabriel. 93-2020 to regulate open air burning in the town of Fort Erie and to repeal bylaw number 16703. 94-2020 to amend fees and charges by bylaw number 40-09 as amended, burning permit and safety plan review. 95-2020 to amend council rules of procedure bylaw number 36-2016 as amended. Electronic meetings and participation is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That bylaw package is on the floor for any questions or comments. Chief, I had one with respect to the bylaw to amend fees and charges. And there's a fee for illegal marijuana grow operation inspection. Why would we be inspecting an illegal operation?
To you, sir. There is operations within the town of Fort Erie that may have been legal in the past, but may not be legal now. The Canada Health issued a lot of licenses for homes that were allowed to grow personally. They might not quite fall under the rules anymore. So technically, if they're illegal, unless we put that in place, we wouldn't be allowed to go in there without police coming with us. So by putting that in place, we can go and do an inspection and make sure that they're at least fire safe.
Very clever. Congratulations. If there are no other questions, I'm going to go to Councillor Butler for third and final reading.
Sorry, I don't have that.
That would be
Councillor
me, Your
McDermott,
Worship.
you have it. So how about if you do it and Councillor Butler can be your seconder?
Yeah.
Now, mine is only on 92-2020.
You don't have 93, 94, and 95, 2020?
No, I just have the bylaw number 92-2020 be given third and final reading.
Okay, so add in 93, 2020, 94, 2020, and 95, 2020.
Your worship, Councillor Butler should have that one.
But she doesn't. So we'll go with what Councillor McDermott's got. I don't know why 92 would have been dealt with separately. So you now have 92, 93, 94, and 95, 2020, Councillor McDermott?
Gotcha.
Please proceed.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaw 92-2020, 93-2020, 94-2020, 95-2020 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Lubberts, do you have resolution number 11?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that bylaw number 96/2020 to confirm the actions of council at its special meeting held August 31st, 2020. Special meeting and committee meeting held, council and committee meeting held on September 2nd, 2020. Council and committee meeting held on September 4th, 2020, 14th, 2020, and council meeting held on September 21st, 2020 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor McDermott, you have resolution number 12, I believe, which is third and final reading.
Your worship, that's correct. It has a typing error in it. That's what's throwing it off.
That was 92/2020.
So
I see.
This is 96, okay.
So it's supposed to be 96. Okay, so,
Ms. Buckfield, you had that all written down, eh?
all right, so here's
Yes,
what,
me.
Councillor McDermott, did you have a seconder? Was it Councillor Butler? For
Yes.
bylaw number 96/2020 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal? That's
Yes,
your
now I
motion?
do. I changed that number.
Great, okay. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. So that takes us to scheduling of meetings. Councillor McDermott, then Noyes, and then Dubanow.
Your worship, this is not a meeting, but it's something that I think we better get out in the public, that the Port Erie Fire Department is going to have a food drive this Saturday at all of the local departments between 9 and 1. I think it's such a timely effort, and I commend the fire department for taking it on. It's a food and bottle drive. I think we all know that with 20% decreases in the CERB to move over to unemployment insurance, the next 3 or 4 months are going to be very difficult. So this is timely, and I would like to ask, everybody out in the public to go to your fire hall between 9 and 1 and help do the community a great service by helping families in need.
So these are beer, liquor bottles, that type of thing? And
Yes.
Cash
And
donations
food.
as well?
Yeah.
Cash donations, chief, just. Yeah, okay. Who'd I go to next? Was it Noyes?
Yes.
Yes, there's a infrastructure business subcommittee on September 30th, which is a Wednesday at 3 o'clock. It will be a Zoom meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We actually have a transit advisory committee meeting coming up this Thursday at 3 o'clock, which is one of the first advisory committee meetings that I'll be attending in a very, very long time.
Exactly. And are there any other meetings? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a planning meeting next week, which is Wednesday, September the 30th at 5 p.m. and it will be a Zoom meeting.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Butler. Unmute yourself.
I'm so sorry.
That's
Thank you,
okay.
Worship. We have a corporate and community subcommittee meeting this Wednesday at 2:30 through Zoom.
That's September 22nd?
3rd.
23rd, sorry. I'm sorry, the time again?
2:30.
Thank you. Any others? There's a land committee meeting on Thursday, September 24th at 9 a.m. There being no other meetings then, Councillor Dubanow, I'm going to take it to you for resolution number 13.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Noyes, would you be agreeable? All righty. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that council adjourns at 9:33 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on October 19th, 2020.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much, folks. Good night.
Good night.